p.m. pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during this state of emergency, signed into law on June 16th, 2021. This meeting will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. People who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so by finding the meeting at www.southborotown.com/remote meetings. First item on the agenda is the Master Plan Committee update. Would that be you, Mrs. Luttrell?
Well, yes, it would. I met with Judith Watson today, the vice chair of the Master Plan Committee, and she's also doing all the editing to make sure all the format is consistent and a little bit of wordsmithing, and she feels very confident that things are all coming together. She also wrote an introductory chapter and an implementation plan, which we will be discussing at the Master Plan Committee meeting on Wednesday. And we are also seeking the help of a consultant to update some census-related data. And that should be coming soon. And hopefully we're on track to get this wrapped up in 2021. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Anyone from the public? Public input does include compliments.
Yes, we'll take them. No one has their hands raised at the moment.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a continued public hearing, 6 to 8 Turnpike Road, modification to major site plan. This is a public hearing that's continued from July 19th, August 16th, September 13th, September 27th. Is Mr. Bemis here?
I do not see him in the attendees at the moment.
Can we, there's a draft decision, notice of decision.
Yes.
That was in our packet, and it's, if you can get that on the screen, I would recommend that we start to go through it. We spent a decent amount of time at our last public hearing on this, and I think unless others have a better suggestion, we would just go right to that draft decision and go through it.
Just my one comment, Don, is it's 7:03, and technically it's 7:05 on our agenda.
Okay, we'll wait till 7:05, which might give me time to find what I was just reading.
Sarah, can you designate me to share screen?
Oh, yes. Sorry about that. All set.
I've got 7:05.
Yes.
Mr. Bemis show up yet?
I still do not see him in the attendees.
Well, let's go through this from the planning board's perspective, and we'll give him and the public, when he shows up, an opportunity to go over it. So the first page is you know, the procedural history. And I've read the whole thing. I may have missed some typos, or there was one date that I questioned, but this is essentially correct. Before I sign these, we go through it and make the final corrections, especially relative to the conditions. But this is the standard language for a decision document. Any questions on procedural history 1 through 7?
No questions.
If not, we'll move on to page 2. And
You
we
guys
can
are
see,
seeing this, correct?
we are seeing it crystal clear.
Okay.
Thanks, Marnie. The bullets at the top, the second to the fourth one down, is a bit unique to one of these modifications, which is that we received a letter and a $5,000 bond for the as-built, and another $2,000 for the supplemental peer review. Otherwise, and then the last bullet talks about the red maple that is being donated to the town. Number 8 refers to correspondence received. Number 9, again, refers to the public continuation and extensions, public hearings, and then the findings. 1 through 4. Again, this is a documentation of how we went through the process. Any questions on page 2? Questions or comments?
I have one small edit on number 3.
Okay,
It's missing a paren on after town's review and consultant. It has the opening paren, but not the closing paren.
maybe that should go and have it be replaced with a comma. I don't know. Okay, we'll note that. Anything else? If not, we'll move past page 2 onto page 3. Which is the continuation of the bullets under 4 on page 2. So there's 4 bullets there. And those are all standard boilerplate parts of these decision documents, along with 5, 6, 7 refers to the specific drainage connection, which we've covered thoroughly. 8 talks again about the donated tree, and 9, the $5,000 bond check. Maybe this should also include the $2,000 for the supplemental inspections. Although that's covered previously. The waivers, there's no waivers. And then the decision of the board. Again, it plugs in today's date, assumes a 5-0 vote to approve. And then it refers to the documents that we would be voting to approve. And then there's the conditions following that. Any questions or comments on page 3?
I'm sorry.
Good on page 3? We'll move on to page 4, which starts with the number
Oh,
1.
there are comments. I have one. Marnie has some.
Oh, okay, on page 3. You're on.
Who, me? Or Marnie?
Yes, Mrs. Luttrell.
I would just add on number 8, the applicant purchased one. I would just reiterate straight species Acer, so we don't get a cultivar.
Okay.
That's it.
And Mrs. Houlihan?
Yeah, so it's my question is more around these documents. And so I guess the question is around all the lid principles. And so the Fuss and O'Neill feedback that came back. And so although it's not specifically a waiver, if we allow this, we are basically making a statement that we are allowing us to not enforce a lid principle. So is that considered as part of a waiver?
I wanted to get through this, and then that list from Fuss and
This
O'Neill's
subject.
last comments that refer to those. There's like, I think there's like 3 or 4 more detailed things where the consultant says it's up to the board to decide. We'll go over those 2 in detail, if that's okay.
Yeah, so, and where would that be reflected in this document?
Let's go through them and see if we need to add them and reflect
Okay.
them in the document.
Thank you.
Yeah. I went through them and have some memory of us feeling comfortable with not requiring some, and I have my notes on that, but we're going through this draft decision document. And after we go through those Fuss and O'Neill comments, we can see how it fits or doesn't fit into this. That's okay. So that's page 3. Are we moving on to page 4? And that's lists 1 through 12 conditions. So if we've read these, let's go to the Fuss and O'Neill.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
on number 5, could we just for consistency have straight native species?
the word straight
Yeah,
added.
Yeah.
Yep.
thanks.
So in the Fuss and O'Neill letter, I started with number 3. It's just right there. And they say It's at the discretion of the planning board to require a review by Fuss and O'Neill once the O&M plan is received. And I think based on our last meeting, either directly or indirectly, we said, yes, we want Fuss and O'Neill to review the O&M plan. And I think that's reflected in the number 3 of the conditions. It says town's engineering consultant to provide construction phase services during construction. That's further down in the Fuss and O'Neill letter. To ensure compliance with approved plans and for the review of as-built and stormwater management and management operation and maintenance plan. So this is part of that, which is it's up to our discretion to have Fuss and O'Neill review the O&M plan, and I believe we said yes, that's what we wanted. Does the board agree with that?
Yep.
And it's reflected in the number 3 condition. And then number 4, the stormwater has a net increase in volume, but the consultant considers it to be minor and recommends, or it's at our discretion to accept this minor increase. I thought at our last meeting, we agreed that that would be okay. If you don't remember it that way, then let's bring it up tonight and see if it's okay or not. Anyone? Okay. The next one is what you just brought up, Marnie, which is the removal of one of the lid principles. Anybody objecting to the removal of a lid principle?
Mr. Morris?
Yes.
I think that's my question, is that should we, and maybe it's more administrative, is it a waiver? My only worry about this, if we waive a requirement of a lid in our legal requirements, and it's not specifically stated as a waiver, should it be documented that it is a waiver? So I'm okay with this one.
So you think that the section in the decision document that says waivers none, it should say waivers, and then then be specific to the lid principle that's being waived and the reason that it's okay.
Correct. I'm just worried about setting any sort of precedent without documenting it as a waiver.
I agree, and I would recommend that we put it in as you stated. The rest of the board, any questions, comments on handling the lid waiver?
Yeah. Sorry if I'm just not remembering, but did the proponent explain this in any of the previous hearings?
I think he did. If you go down or up, there were things that they did, and they say that they had not included them in their, I'm not sure, not calculations, but did not include similar pre-treat.
Peter is with us now, so in case anyone has any questions directly for him.
Peter,
Good evening. Sorry, I joined you a bit late here, just trying to log on. But what I wanted to stress, and I'm disappointed that Fuss and O'Neill didn't at least describe this, is that we are eliminating one lid principle, but we're instituting another one that doesn't exist. And that is the infiltrative component that our system will provide, which is a lid principle. We're just substituting one for the other. But what we didn't do in our calculations was take advantage of that fact. So when we express that the volume would increase, it's only because we didn't take credit for the infiltrative component. And we did that strictly to be conservative. We felt as though that the way this whole project had been kind of put together, that approach frankly hadn't been taken. And we thought that if we were going to add on to this parking lot, that the only prudent way to do it was to treat it as if none of that would be accounted for in the design of the storage area. So we provided 100% volume for storage for every cubic foot of water that the system would collect. However, with the soils that are there, because we did do a soil test, we verified the offset to groundwater and we verified that the soils were suitable for infiltrative drainage. And we will get that bonus. I'm just saying that in our calculations, we didn't take credit for it because it didn't think it was a prudent thing to do. And for lid principles, if you'd like me to structure a waiver, I would say I would ask the board to waive one lid principle for another lid principle, because the project can't do both. We don't have the ability to create another water treatment stream because the state highway system that we tie into is not going to let the water go into it by overland flow. We have to do it in a closed system, and we have to discharge right next to the state system where their pipe discharges at a head wall on the off ramp from Route 9. So our hands are somewhat tied because the project was approved in a certain manner, and we're trying to make a modification to that approved plan. But I wouldn't say that we're not having any lid principles here, and I feel like that's the description that's been put forward with the project. I think we're trading one off for another, would be a better way to put it. Thank you.
so you're willing to provide the language for a waiver request or waiver that's being granted, explaining why you're waiving one lid principle and providing another?
If I had to structure that comment this evening, I would put it that way. I didn't know I would have to do something like this, and I hate to put this off for another 2 weeks if I can avoid it.
No, we're going to handle this. This is the draft decision document. We went through it. We started without you, but we're going to give you an opportunity to go through with us again. And the point in this review at this time was Mrs. Houlihan's suggestion that if we're going to waive or allow a lid principle to be removed, that it should be handled in this document as something that's being waived. So if you go to the, you have this document, Peter?
I do.
You see that section where it says waivers none?
Right. Yeah, because we were trying to avoid having any.
So we'll just add this and explain it.
Okay. I can work with Karina on that. I mean, I think
Yeah.
I've just stated to you how I would see it, and for the membership to be comfortable with that I don't see us as like we're not following a lid principle. We certainly are. It's just not
Okay.
not the one that was originally approved for the project. It is a different one.
Yep. All set, Mrs. Houlihan?
Yes, and that's what I recall, Peter, from our conversation last time. And I think it was just, I don't know if you have it off the top, and maybe Karina will, is the section number, but I think it's really straightforward for what the language would be. So I'm comfortable with that.
We'll handle that. If this vote, if it goes to a vote tonight and the vote carries, then it's standard that the final exact language of the decision document is resolved between you and the town planner and then I sign it. So this won't hold you up if we can keep going as we are. So the next one was number 8, but that goes back up to number 3, which we said is one of the conditions. It's the third condition with the $5,000. Number 9, stormwater pollution prevention plan to be reviewed by Fuss and O'Neill. I believe the board's position is yes, we want Fuss and O'Neill to review the stormwater pollution prevention plan. And that's in condition 3 also. No, it's in condition 8. Okay with that, everyone? Keep moving. Number 10 talks about the TP and the TN removal. You want to talk to us about, I think we went over this, Peter.
The final comments from Fuss and O'Neill wanted me to go through again another financial cost analysis. I had described it to you that it mean basically for the cost of this project to do phosphorus removal with the jellyfish product, which Contact is it's proprietary to them. It would absorb about half the project cost. So it's just not, it's not cost effective for the scope and scale. Unfortunately, I mean, if there was a more cost effective way to do it, we do it. There just isn't. But we're getting other things with it, which the project, which this doesn't take credit for. Again, I can't take, we deliberately didn't take credit for the infiltration piece because it seemed it's self-serving. And I didn't want to take that approach with this because I didn't want someone to say we were being self-serving with it. We really wanted it to stand on its own 100% as if we got no credit for that. And so we didn't. And so we don't get credit for any of it. And I can't start taking credit for parts of it and not other parts. But I can tell you effectively that less stormwater will leave the site when we're done. And it's being pre-treated sufficiently. And so the receiving water that receives it will see a lower phosphorus and a lower nitrogen loading than it normally would have under the previous system. And that's all there is to it, but I just can't take credit for it.
So is the board okay to accept the applicant's design relative to TP and TN?
So, Peter, can you explain what the environmental consequences of the board accepting the system as you're proposing?
Okay. Well, in the case of this site, I don't see a very high nitrogen or phosphorus loading anyways, because we're supposed to be using a organic based fertilizer. To be perfectly honest, I tend to doubt they do a lot of that there anyways, but if this was a residential project or something where they were all trying to have a nice bright green lawn, they'd be putting down a lot more nitrogen and phosphorus than we probably all would care to know. So in the case of this project, I don't think we put that much down anyways. Then there is surface water that does come into contact with that. There's naturally occurring phosphorus and nitrogen in our environment. And the TSS removal will pick up some of that. So that contact device goes in. And then the rest of it, hopefully, is captured by infiltration so that we're getting the natural soils to absorb some of that before it gets into the receiving water, which is pretty much what the system's doing there now. The plants that are in that bio retention area do the same thing. But they're not effective at taking care of TSS. I can tell you that the way that system is set up today, there's not very much TSS removal going on. So
I'm trying to find where I could have sworn in Fuss and O'Neill's comments, they say the system that is being removed does actually treat.
I'll just, you don't even have to see it. I do agree with it. It does do that. That's what a bioretention system does.
So
It does.
when you say that the current system is doing what your system will, that doesn't line up to me.
Well, no, we're not taking credit for any. So we're basically going forward and saying there's zero, whereas the bioretention system does provide phosphorus and nitrogen removal. It does.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I mean, for just speaking for myself, I don't understand this, and I'm not sure that I'm going to be okay with it.
The way I understand Mr. Bemis explaining it is you've got, if you can picture yourself at the end of the pipe just before the receiving water, and you don't know where it's coming from, you don't know anything except how much of it you're receiving and how much of it contains phosphorus and nitrogen, and at what concentrations. So that's a certain amount, it's a certain volume, and it's a certain total amount of phosphorus and nitrogen that the receiving water is getting. What Mr. Bemis explained is that because the new system will infiltrate more water into the soil before it gets to the receiving water will actually get less nitrogen and phosphorus because there's a lower volume. Is that the way you explained it, Peter?
Yes, but we didn't take credit for it in any mathematical formula because we deliberately wanted our system to be as large as it could be, to not imply that we could make the system smaller because we took advantage of the infiltration component, if that makes sense. We made the system large enough to account for every cubic foot of water having to be processed within the volume of space that was needed, without taking credit for any infiltration at all.
And Concom's already gone over all this, and they're fine with it?
Yes. Yes, and we discussed this at length about phosphorus and nitrogen removal, and many of the members are very familiar with this component. Some of the members actually have to deal with it in other communities because they do this sort of work, and they know when I said how costly it was, they're very familiar with those costs because they're dealing with it in their municipalities as well. It's something we're all trying to deal with, and we're trying to find cost-effective ways to do it. I believe that our system, if I was to try to put a drop or have a water collection system today to monitor the quality that leaves and then do the quality of water when we're done, I would just say, based upon the experience that we've had with the systems that I'm proposing here, that I think you'll actually have equal or better, because it's doing the technique in a different way, especially on the large storm events, which this system doesn't do at all. The system that's there today, if there was a very heavy rain event, it would just go right out, and there'd be very little treatment. Whereas the system that we're going to be putting in place will actually collect that high TSS removal, and it will also infiltrate that stormwater at that very high level, which the system that's there today doesn't do. Just it's totally two different ways of approaching it. And I wish there was an easy answer. Going forward, we probably, if this was a new project, we could try to do both. I just can't do both with the circumstances that we find at this site, because I have a highway system that I have to tie into, and they are not going to allow me to change the way the water is received by the highway system. And that's why they were ready to agree to this too, because they anticipate that we're going to have less water. They're going to see less water than they see today from this system. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? The way Mr. Bemis explains this, and as a civil engineer, I've had some experience with this, and I accept his explanation and believe that it's equal to or better.
Mr. Chairman?
Mrs. Luttrell.
Similar to the previous situation, should that be noted in a waiver since our consultant says it doesn't meet the requirements?
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Okay,
Mr. Bemis, okay with that?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
I'll be happy to work with Karina to do that for you, sure.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on number 10? Number 11 was to have, where's number 11? There is no number 11.
The next one was 15.
No, under the conditions.
Oh, conditions. Do you want me to go back to conditions?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's simple. It just says that we want to have Fuss and O'Neill to perform, construction progress inspections and to review the final as-built, and that's the 11th condition. No, it's not. Yeah, I've got us in, yeah, there we go. 11 in the conditions is different. I got my 11s mixed up. Anyways, it talks about hiring Fuss and O'Neill to perform construction inspections as the work is being done. And I believe the board said, yes, we want that also. And that's reflected in number 7 of the procedural history, reflecting the $5,000 for the as-built and O&M plan and $2,000 for supplemental peer review. So which document is on the sheet now? Is on, okay, the decision. Okay, so that was the end of page 4. And it carries over, number 12 carries over onto page 5, which is boilerplate. And the rest of it is boilerplate. Peter, any questions on, not you, Peter, the board have any questions on page 4 or 5, now that we've gone over them? So let's go back to page 1. For Peter's sake, you've got page 1 there, Peter?
In the draft decision, yes.
Yep. We didn't change anything there, did we?
I think everything is accurate that we've submitted, and we complied with the last provisions that you had made at the previous meeting about the payments and for both design review, for as-built review or covenant, or if you will, bond, and then the tree. We specifically got a native tree from Shrubs and Trees.
Where do we add those two, the word, what's the word, Mimi? Straight. We added that in 2 places.
On the natives, I'm fine with that. I actually was on, I just wasn't, I wasn't able to speak during that period, but I saw you going through the review. So I'm comfortable with, I'm comfortable with all those items. Thank you.
All right, so having gone through all of that, cleared up all these other items, we'll open it up to the public. And then based on that, the next step would be to close the public hearing and then to entertain a motion to approve the modification subject to what we went over tonight and is in this draft decision. So any questions or comments from the public? Anyone? All
Do
set,
not
Peter?
see any hands raised for this.
I'm all set. I just hope the board will support this project. I think
Mr. Mills,
Turnpike Automotive does a good job there, so thank you.
Chairman, I make a motion, we close the public hearing for 6 and 8 Turnpike Road, modification of major site plan.
Seconded.
motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, this is to close the public hearing. All in favor, Morris, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Okay, next step would be to entertain a motion to approve the modification.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we approve the modification for 6 and 8 Turnpike Road per our discussion and conditions reviewed this evening.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
So that sets in motion your work with Karina sooner than later, Peter. And then
Sure.
she'll contact me and say that the document is ready for my review and signing.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your help.
Okay, thanks and good luck. Okay, next item on the agenda is continued public hearing, proposed downtown district bylaw zoning map and design guidelines. This is continued from July 19th, August 16th, September 13th, September 20th, September 27th. So we see that the Economic Development Committee and the Board of Selectmen have also posted an agenda for tonight's meeting. So we will, I guess, start with the EDC. Are you there, Rob?
Yes, he is.
We'll allow the EDC to come to order. And then we'll ask if the Board of Selectmen haven't, then they can come to order in public. Good evening, Rob.
Good evening. I am hopefully going to be able to have the rest of the committee join me. And first, I'm going to open the meeting of the Softboro Economic Development Committee on Monday, the 18th. I'm going to make a roll call vote to those people who are here. And I'm going to go in the order in which I see them on my screen. Chris Robbins.
Everyone's just being promoted.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm just trying to hustle them over.
Yeah. Well, I do know that there's a Red Sox game and I want to be cognizant of people's time. I also have a statement. I just want to get to that as quickly as possible. So,
Okay. I
Well, Rob,
think-
once you've called your meeting to order, then I'm going to switch over to the selectmen, let them do the same, and then we'll come back and you'll have the floor.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to call the meeting of the Softboro Economic Development Committee to order. As I said, I'm going to do a roll call vote of the people on the screen. Alan Belenak.
Here.
Chris Robbins.
Here.
Julie Connolly.
Here.
John Wood.
Here.
And Rob Anderson, chair here. So Don, I'll turn it back over to you for the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, I see Lisa's on the screen. Good evening,
Good evening,
Madam
everyone.
Chair.
Good evening. Thank you for once again holding the public hearings. I am not sure. I can't see if I have a quorum here or not. I see Mr. Dennington is here. Sarah, is Mr. Healy here? Or Mr.
Yes,
Stivers?
everybody is on their way over. I think we should have everyone.
Okay. Ms. Malinowski is not there? Or is she? No. Okay. Thank you, Kate. So I will call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order at 7:45. We'll do a roll call vote as well. Mr. Dennington?
Here, Andrew.
Thank you. Mr. Stivers?
Here.
Mr. Healy?
I'm here.
And Ms. Brascio here. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Morris.
So we'll go to the,
Sorry,
I'm
Donnie.
sorry, go ahead, Lisa.
One quick thing, I believe advisory posted a meeting for tonight too, so I don't know if they have members. But they also need to call a meeting to order. I'm not sure, Sarah. I know they posted because they were.
Yes, I'm
Roll call
gonna
before.
promote Ms. Cook.
Hello, Kathy.
Hello. I doubt if we've got a quorum. Sarah, anybody else you see from advisory? I see Andrew Pfaff.
Yes,
I see Marcy
I just promoted her.
and
We need two more for quorum.
I don't see anybody else unless I'm missing someone.
Was
Okay,
that a cat we heard?
Yes.
Jesse, send your dog over there and get that straightened out.
Okay, so we're here just to listen. You can put us back out. We don't have a quorum, so we're fine.
Okay, when you do, just let us
Thank
know
you.
if you want
Okay.
to come to order. Okay, so let's go back to Rob and the EDC's portion of the beginning
Yeah.
of the hearing.
Thank you, Chairman Morris. I first want to thank the Select Board and the Planning Board for their efforts on the draft zoning bylaw that the EDC helped write. It's gone through many iterations, but I think as a committee, we feel it's close. However, there are 3 areas that our committee feels are restrictive to the type of development identified as a goal in the town's master plan. The first is the restriction that maxes out the residential component of any development at 40% residential. With first floor commercial and housing above, this suggests that the percentage, if there is one, should be at least 50%. I cannot think of a developer or resident that would find a commercial residential mix on the same floor of one of the upper floors attractive. It can make it easier to have one or the other with the simple change from a 40% to 50% in the zoning language, as the EDC is hopeful the planning board would consider. Secondly, the EDC feels that the number of residential units allowed by right is too low. The EDC had started with a higher number of 12, and we have adjusted down from that number multiple times. However, lowering the residential units to 3 by right lessens the possibility of adding affordable units in Southboro. Within the draft zoning that we wrote, a developer is required to provide an affordable unit for projects over 4. By having a by right number at 4 instead of 3 units, a developer will have a choice. They can either choose to go to 4 units and, as a win for Southboro, provide the town with an affordable unit. Or if the pro forma does not work, they'll stay at 3, the number proposed by the planning board. It seems reasonable to encourage affordable units in the town, and hopefully the planning board can see how a movement from 3 to 4 units by right can benefit the community. The EDC's last concern is on the floor area ratio, more commonly known as FAR, restriction of 0.3 for the overlay. At the select board meeting in June, the EDC, at the request of the select board, supported adjusting the FAR down to 0.35. That compromise seemed realistic as the request did come from the select board. The restrictive change from 0.35 to 0.3 was a bit of a surprise. The overlay is meant to demonstrate to developers that we are business friendly. When the FAR for residential development is 0.3, the same as the overlay, it seems counterintuitive to what the master plan wants us to accomplish. We hope that the planning board will reconsider changing the FAR from 0.3 to the 0.35 number originally suggested by the select board. And once again, I appreciate the planning board and select board for allowing us the opportunity to present some logical arguments to the changes and concerns that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I'll open it up to the selectmen and then for questions or comments or presentation. And then open it up to the planning board or to the public, whichever we prefer, and see where this takes us. So back to you, Lisa.
All right, hey, Don, I personally myself don't have any questions. I'll go through the board. I think it was more of coming here tonight and following your meeting and, you know, seeing if there was any compromises that could be made. So there is nothing for me at this point. I can't promise there won't be later, but at this point, there's nothing. Mr. Dennington?
Yeah, I'm at the same place. I do have some thoughts, but I think it might be more productive to first go around and you know, find out what your feedback is, and also if there's any comments from the advisory committee as well.
Thank you. Mr. Stivers?
Thank you, Lisa. I guess I would generally say I support the request of the EDC. I've been around this for a long time now and made a number of public comments on my feelings about a lot of these issues, but I guess I remain hopeful that there's a way to get our various groups together, hopefully this evening. And it seems to me we're very close here in terms of a place where we could all recommend approval of this bylaw at special town meeting. So I think that what Mr. Anderson suggested is a reasonable move here, and I'm supportive of those particular changes. Thank you.
Mr. Healy?
I always enjoy saying, I agree with Mr. Stivers.
Thank you. All right.
I'll write that down in the history book here. Thank you.
Mr. Morris, thank you. Back to you.
Okay. Does the board want to speak to the EDC's comments tonight, or do we want to open it up to the public? Mr. Mills?
I mean, I can speak to the 40% piece, definitely. You know, I was going off, it was me who made that recommendation originally, and going off of the examples that were provided to us, that there would be, say, a 3-story building. The first floor would be commercial, the second floor would be office space, and the third floor would be residential. So, you know, that's the way I came up with the 40%. And, you know, I could have easily, you know, through that same logic, could even go even more restrictive and suggested 30%, but I didn't. I thought 40% was reasonable, and you know, that it was proposing that it would be more for commercial options or businesses in the downtown than residential. So that was the thought process behind that. I understand too on the by right, the proposal was 3. Again, I'm looking at just the buildings that are currently down there. I think if you're going to blow it out, or not blow it out, but if it's going to be a large development that's going to be put down there and it's going to be more than 3 units, I think it should go through the planning board. That's my personal feeling, and I think we got a lot of feedback from the residents as well, that they felt the same way. So those are my comments.
Mr. Stein?
So I don't think we have a provision currently in this draft to go above 40% by special permit. Do we? Am I missing that?
Says you can go up to 0.5 FAR by special permit.
Right, but that doesn't speak to the 40%, does it?
Oh, no, sorry.
That's what I was asking. So I'm kind of on the fence on this. I sort of agree with Mr. Mills in that my inclination would be to have it anything over the 3 units go to special permit. It's not having it go through the special permit process to me is not prohibitive. We're out to protect Southboro, to protect the aesthetics of the town and reach that happy medium between development and economic progress and preservation. But I'm open, to discussion on the floor area ratio piece. And I'll be curious to hear the public comments as well. Thanks.
Mrs. Luttrell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've tried to follow this pretty closely through the other committee meetings, and I think I've either attended or listened to all the meetings that have had this bylaw on the agenda. My first question is the change to 50% and the 4 units. Has that been voted on by the EDC? Is that an EDC position? Because I haven't, as far
Not yet,
as
but
I
I
know.
can make it a motion to be.
Yes, the EDC has, we did take a vote that we had concerns on all 3 of those issues. And the vote was to be able to voice those concerns. But as John made clear, we haven't taken a firm position one way or the other. We have just simply taken a vote to voice those concerns.
Okay. So the vote was on June 22nd for the EDC position. And I just wanted to answer one of the concerns that was raised in the EDC's letter about the 11th hour changes. And I wanted to refresh your memory on 6/22 at the Board of Selectmen EDC joint meeting. It was the expectation that after the bylaw, the map, and the guidelines were sent to the planning board, that the planning board would open public hearings, take public input, and very likely suggest amendments or changes to the bylaw and get them back to the Board of Selectmen before the end of September, which is what the planning board did. So I think to say that 11th hour changes were made when it was the expectation of the Board of Selectmen and the EDC is very disingenuous. As to the 40% restriction, this bylaw is supposed to promote small or encourage small scale commercial development in the downtown. As the bylaw was originally written, there was a 10% minimum commercial And you should zone for what you want.
That
So
was a mistake that we've been asking to get Lisa to get changed since February. I can
Excuse
send you the
me.
email. Sorry, I apologize.
Excuse me,
I'll
I'm
stop.
speaking, John. So it was intended to be a commercial bylaw, so you should zone for what you want. And the 40% makes perfect sense to me because that encourages a majority commercial in mixed use, which from all the literature that the EDC has passed out is what they're trying to encourage in the downtown, small scale commercial development. Residential is much easier to do. So if you have a very small commercial requirement, what you're going to get is residential buildings. Also, it was always the intention that there would be a mix of commercial space and residential space on floors, because there was discussion of having the front of facing the street had to be commercial, and then allowing for there to be an ADA compliant residential unit on the first floor. So there would be a mix of commercial and residential on the first floor. In Hudson, a town which has been talked a lot about in the downtown district discussions, they have commercial uses on their upper floors. So it's not unheard of in a mixed use to have mixed uses on the floors, to have commercial uses on the upper floors, although it's required that the bottom facing the street is commercial. The reduction of 3 units by right in a mixed use, I think makes perfect sense because a 4th unit requires affordable housing. And the affordable housing must meet the DCHD requirements so that the units are eligible for our SHI housing inventory. And I think it's onerous for us to put that on the building commissioner, to have her be responsible for ensuring that the affordable units meet all those guidelines. And it makes much more sense to have the planning board make sure that all those guidelines are met and that affordable units will count towards our inventory. The floor area ratio, the 0.30, the purpose of the downtown initiative was to encourage small scale development. The permitted uses that promote the conversion of existing building in a manner that maintains the visual character and architectural scale of the existing downtown. And the existing downtown, the average FAR is 0.26. So at a 0.30 would keep it within that existing scale, which the EDC had written on their the literature they sent out to residents and businesses that there was one of the goals. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mrs. Houlihan?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with my other planning board members. I think with the purpose to encourage small scale development, I think we actually made huge strides in bringing by right use in a district that did not have that before. For all intents and purposes, I feel like we're talking about one lot right now that's available. And I think for what we have in front of us is a great collaboration, and we should probably move forward with what was the planning board believes is the right process. And I think Mrs. Luttrell has just detailed a lot of what my support would also recommend. So thank you.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, just sorry, one last thing.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt. I wonder if, we might want to consider going above in the definition section under mixed use development, allowing the ground floor facing the street usage the residential portion being exceeding 40% by special permit. Since we're allowing, the fourth unit, as we discussed, by special permit, it does kind of defeat it if we're keeping the residential usage at 40%. Does that make sense? In other words, if we're allowing 4 units or more by special permit in a mixed use building, inherently we would have to have some concession for greater than 40%, unless unless we don't want to allow that. But to me, I think the point of having a fourth unit, which would be affordable, that's a concession that personally I would be willing to, not a concession, but a change I would be willing to support. But in principle, I agree with my fellow members on the other points.
Thank you. I too agree with my fellow board members at this point in time. We've been at this for quite a while. And as I have said over the years, when we get to these zoning articles, they're very difficult to get through because of the 2/3 requirement, 2/3 majority requirement. And also, zoning is pretty boring stuff. And it's also complicated. There's a lot of moving parts, definitions and allowed uses, not allowed uses, allowed with special permit, all that stuff. So part of the formula or recipe to get zoning articles through the town meeting is to try to keep it simple as you can, and not have people, although sometimes people might say that the reason we allow amendments is to make it better. And so that's why it's allowed to have amendments at this point in the public hearing and right up until the town meeting, including the town meeting. But we've seen over the years that once you start introducing amendments, people, there's not a whole lot of time to explain the impact of the amendment and have people understand that. And we find that at the meeting, people throw their hands up and say, this needs more work. Let's indefinitely postpone it. I also noticed over the years that a unified approach by the town leaders, the town boards, elected and appointed, gives the people a comfort level that that many people with that much experience and time in looking at these items, if they're comfortable with it, that some people will say, then I'm comfortable with it, and they'll vote for it. Others may consider support by these elected or appointed boards to be a further reason to dive deep into it to make sure that it's what they say it is. So I believe that at this point in time, having the three board, the differences The differences that are being proposed from the written warrant are, to me, they're not showstoppers. They're viable, that what's written will work, or if it won't work as well as what's being proposed, it can't be a whole lot big difference. And what's being some of the differences, the special permit process. And we've seen that the special permit process is a very good one that allows the public and the neighbors to get involved and provide input as opposed to by right. And the planning board has a long history of moving these projects and these special permits to conclusion when the materials are properly submitted and presented. So it's my recommendation that we stay with what's written in the warrant. We go ahead with a unified approach, selectmen, EDC, planning board, hopefully advisory, and tell the public that this is huge, this is big. We're allowing mixed use. That was the genesis for this whole effort. It's being allowed, and there are other components in there that make it even better. Let's vote for it and give it a chance. As we saw in the public hearing, some people are asking to have their properties added to the proposed district. And that's maybe a good idea, maybe not, but it's not for this time around. And as far as the housing component, another good idea, but this article should lean toward economic development and give it a chance. And that's the way I feel. And I would hope that that you would see that it's more important to have a unified approach with something that will work than take the risk of adding amendments and having people get confused and have the whole thing delayed, put off, and we wind up with nothing. So I'll open it up. Let's open it up to the public, and then we'll come back around to the EDC, the selectmen, and anyone else that wants to speak, planning board, so on. So we see a lot of hands up, but let's go to the public. We've all had a chance to speak initially, and then we'll come back to the EDC. Anyone from the public? Neighbors, anybody?
Yes, Mr. Wilkinson.
Good evening, Ray.
Ray Wilkinson from 10 Main Street. Everybody's inputs from the EDC to the selectmen.
Hard to hear you, Ray.
Can you hear me? Can you try that again? I did hit the mute.
Go ahead. Just try to get closer to the microphone, maybe.
Is this working? Hello?
Go ahead, Ray.
Can you hear me? I am speaking. Can anybody hear me?
No.
Okay. Try to unmute me again.
It's not a matter of muting and unmuting. The audio is just very muffled.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. went directly on into an internet. Looks like a lot better. If it's muffled, I'll just say I liked all the inputs from everybody. I thought that I liked the planning board's agreement. Just listen to the people, to the residents' inputs. And I just would agree mostly with the views that I've heard from the planning board.
All set for now, Ray? Anyone else from the public?
I don't see anyone else with their hands raised, except for
So-
panelists.
Okay, let's go back to Rob, and then you can call on anyone that you'd like to, Rob.
Thank you. And to the point that you had made earlier, these are small changes, but can actually embrace the development community, which is kind of why we thought they were important to bring up at this point in time. But what I would like to do is first recognize some of the members of the EDC who have joined me tonight. I know that I saw John with his hand raised first. So I'm going to start with John and then go to Julie on the EDC. John?
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for Donnie, Mr. Chair, for allowing us to come tonight. First up, I'd just like to apologize to Mr. Chow. I didn't mean to interrupt you, and I apologize for that. But we keep going on about this 10%, which was never the intention. You said, well, we shouldn't have presented that at the hearings. We've been trying to get that changed. I can go through emails since February. I know that at one point, Julie even rewrote it to have it changed and turned in. It just never got in. So I apologize for that, but I just want to make sure people know that was never the intention to have 10% in there. I think we're so close. I echo the chair of both committees, EDC as well as the planning board, that we're so close. But in my eyes, that they're small, and obviously I want to try to go my way a little bit. But for me, going to 4 units from 3, we have a better chance of getting a developer to come in and have 3 at market value and 1 at, say, 60% for apartments or condos over the 4. And to say that it's too much work for the building inspector to handle the part with the DHCD, it didn't sound, you may be right, but when I spoke to DHCD, it didn't sound all that hard to do, and to keep it from getting, to keep it in our census. I know there was a problem with some before where the information didn't get turned in time, so we missed the safe harbor, but that's that in the past. It's not now. I think that we can take care of that part. So the affordable housing, we've been talking about diversified housing in town. Yeah, mixed use is mainly about commercial, but it's also, there is a housing component of it, and diversified housing is also affordable housing. So I don't think we need to have anything big scaled, and there's really nothing that can fit. And I agree with that. So I'd love to see 50% instead of 40, because it just makes sense. A 3-story building down there, I don't really see fitting with the design guidelines and other things. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I just don't see a 3-story building working with some of the things we put in place in this and oversight. So to have a 50%, at least you can have the whole 2nd floor as residential, which just makes sense to me. That I don't pretend to know code or engineering or any of that. That just makes sense. And the other thing, we're so close. The FAR, I could live with the 30. Personally, that's just me. If that was a consensus, 30, 35, that's not that big a deal. But the 50% and 4 units, that is to me. And the way I look at it is we have at least 3 of the 5 select board that are saying that they're voting for this because we need something. And this is better than nothing. We have the chance to make something good that everybody can agree on and work with just a couple of minor tweaks, one way or the other. And I agree, it would be great if we could come to some type of a collaborative vote and everybody would be on the same page. because we're so close to having something not that just is there, but something that's there and everybody thinks it could work. That's it for me. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, John. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Julie from the EDC.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you everyone for having us. And I appreciate all the comments that have come forward so far. I agree. This has been a tremendous effort. It has taken a huge amount of collaboration. We've gone over this so many times, and we are very, very close. As far as an amendment, I think that if we could go to town meeting, I agree with Mr. Morris that having a united front is really important because this is very complicated. So our towns, our neighbors and friends at town meeting are going to be looking to us for guidance because, after all of this time that, even people have been following closely, I know it's very complicated. So certainly it's not something that most people are going to be able to digest in 15 minutes. So, but I do believe that these couple of points are very, very critical, and that, we can all agree, okay, we came to consensus on paper, but if we don't have something that actually works and does the original intent of why we came forward, which is not only development, because the two actually go hand in hand. Initial request was, can we add residential as one of the mixed uses? And that's what started off this whole process. So that being said, I think mixed use also, as we've talked about from the beginning of this process, meets other town goals that have been, that have come up again and again and again in tens of, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars that the town has spent in studies and master plans and consultants and that have been approved and that have been agreed upon and signed off on even by this planning board, including I believe it was the 2016 housing plan and the 2008 master plan, which all had the same goals, which align with what we're trying to do here. My concern is that the 40% really undermines the entire intent of allowing mixed-use development. I hear what Ms. Luttrell was saying, and I hear what Mr. Mills was saying. Sure, it would allow a 3-story building to have a first floor of commercial, a second floor of maybe office, and a third floor of residential. That's fine, but we don't know that a proponent's going to come forward with a 3-story building. We've restricted height. We have other restrictions with FAR that make that potentially more difficult. So I'd like to have the opportunity to have a 2-story building. And while I understand Ms. Luttrell's point that we've already contemplated having mixed uses by allowing the opportunity to potentially have a residential unit on our first floor to allow for ADA, because we thought that that was the right thing to do. I don't think that commercial really works well as a second story. Maybe there are some rare exceptions, but most commercial owners, will tell you that they don't want to have a commercial space on the second floor. That's just not good business. They wanted street level. So I don't really understand what the harm is in increasing the percentage from 40% to 50% to allow a 2-story building to actually be mixed use. I think it will be very difficult for a proponent to come forward with a 2-story project with this restriction in place. The second issue regarding the number of units from 3 to 4, my concern here is, again, from the beginning, we've been talking about not just us, and it's, this isn't necessarily a EDC specific goal, but it's certainly a town goal that's been given a lot of lip service over the past several years about how we want to diversify housing, how we want to improve our affordable housing stock. Now, if we require, so if we say, okay, proponent, you can have up to 3 units without a special permit. If you want a 4th unit, you have to get a special permit. Now, that 4th unit, because it will have to be affordable, the developer is going to make less money on that unit. So for them to have to jump through another hoop to get the use permit, and I want to remind everybody that this is only the use permit, just because there's something is allowed, their use is allowed by right, doesn't mean that they bypass the planning board. It doesn't mean that they bypass any other permits or approvals or committees. It just means that this use is allowed by right. And I think it's a statement, it would be a positive statement coming from our town to say that we want affordable housing. We want 4 units with one of them being affordable. I find it difficult to see a situation where a developer is going to want to jump through that extra hoop to get an extra apartment to make less money. I understand the concern about wanting to have oversight, but I don't think the use permit changes that picture. A proponent is still going to have to comply. And my understanding of affordable housing is that really the only thing that needs to be done is that that apartment or unit needs to be deed restricted to restrict it to affordable housing. I don't think that it requires that additional level of oversight. And I don't think that that oversight is achieved through the special permit process. I don't know that that adds more to ensure that that would be. If they're violating the code, they're violating the code. If they build 4 units and one is not affordable, they're in a violation. I don't see how that could happen, how they would get all their other permits and approvals. And I really think that restricting the reduction from 4 to 3 actually discourages strongly the affordable housing component. So I just wanted to add that. The FAR also, that's another one. I think my issue here is, just so everyone's clear, currently there is no FAR in a building with a 1.0 FAR. You can't, because there's other restrictions, but there's no specific FAR restriction. If our intent in going into this whole operation that we've been working on for 2 years is to encourage some small scale development, then I'm not sure why we're doing something that's so much severely more restrictive. I also want to point out that while there are some smaller lots in the downtown area, or some buildings with smaller FARs, there are also some buildings with larger FARs. Morrow's Market as a FAR, I believe it's 0.57. Those are the kind of, that looks like downtown to me. It's street facing. It's it's right on the sidewalk. That doesn't look out of place to me. And I'd be interested to hear if that looks out of place to others. Again, that's not even close to what we're asking for. We're asking for something that's slightly less restrictive than what's already allowed in residential. And I believe that it's not, I believe that the message that it sends to say, yes, we're trying to encourage development now in this downtown area and make a vibrant downtown, but you're restricted to the same FAR as is allowed in the residential units, in the residential zoning zone. I just don't think that makes any sense. So again, I agree that I think a unified front is important. I'm very proud of the work that's gone into this by all of these committees. I know we're all taking this seriously and trying to do what we think is best for downtown, but we've compromised a lot. We all have. I think just those few small tweaks will give me something that I'd be so proud to support. And I can't wait to, try to make sure my friends and family are coming out to support that. I don't think I can support it in its current state. I think it undermines the intent. I think it doesn't do enough to, having a zoning bylaw will not do anything unless it actually has the metrics in it and the substance that will allow for something to happen. And I think those 3 things undermine the very intent of what we're trying to do. That's all.
Thank you, Julie. And I know I do have other members of my committee who are here. I don't see anyone else with their hand raised on our committee. So if I might, I think we're close. Like John and Julie, I'm very proud of some of the steps that we have taken. The one thing, and I'm going to come back to, and there was a note put in the chat about a 3-story building in downtown being unsightly. Well, that's part of the design guidelines that we're going for. But once again, at 40% residential, if you want to have residential in that building, you're going to have to go to a 3rd story, because no developer is going to split a floor, half residential, half commercial. It's not going to encourage the developer to do both. That's not what they're looking for. So the idea of getting to 50% so that we can get to 2-story buildings where the upper floor is residential and the lower floor is commercial fits our economic development goals. It can fit the diversity of housing goals. It can, to Mr. Hawkinson's chat point there, it could fit a little bit more in the character of the downtown. And I think that's what we want. These are small changes. These are, And I have mentioned before, we compromised at the beginning on the number of units by right. We felt comfortable moving down to a 0.35 FAR. We don't feel comfortable with the 40%. And that's where we as an EDC are looking for some level of compromise and jointness with the planning board to say, yes, we like the idea of residential up top, commercial on the bottom. And that's where that percentage can be useful. So unless I have any other members from my EDC committee, what I'm going to do is lower my hand. We are here to answer some questions. At some point in time, if we need to take a vote or if you need us to close the meeting, Chairman Morris, please let me know. But I'm just going to lower my hand and put myself on mute. Thank you.
Andrew, you had your hand up earlier.
Kathy, did you want to go first?
Yes, if I could, Don.
Good evening, Kathy.
Good evening. So advisory still does not have a quorum, so Andrew and I are both speaking individually. Advisory will meet Wednesday night. But just to remind everyone, advisory's role is not to say whether 35 or 30 is right or wrong. We're to take a position and make a recommendation to the town meeting as far as what we think they should vote on. So we're trying to make sure that we have heard all viewpoints on the 3 points that are being discussed tonight. So I've listened very closely to everyone, and everyone's made a very good argument, let me say that. But if I had to pick where I think the better argument is on all 3, I believe EDC's got the better argument on the number of units. I think they've got the better argument on the 50 versus 40. And I think the 35 to 30 sounds really arbitrary. I don't think it makes much of a difference. So I'm not sure where you come out on that one as far as whether what would make a developer want to do this or not do it. So I encourage Don for you to maybe rethink those 2. The 50% really is going to, you know, as you said what you said a few minutes ago so eloquently. So I'm not going to repeat what you said, but it's exactly right. These things are hard to understand by town meeting. These folks come, this is not their background. They're trying to do their best. They may have very little knowledge till they get there that night. We don't even know who's coming on the night. We're still in COVID. We're inside. We're all going to be spaced apart. We can't talk to each other very well. So it's going to be a strange meeting as it is. So I don't see how we think this is going to pass if we get to that meeting and start arguing about these 3 things. So I really think that EDC, I think BOS is probably going to go along with what gets decided. So I think that they just want to get something in front of the town to get voted on. So I think it's really between EDC and planning board to try to come to an agreement on these 3. And I do believe EDC is probably compromised a lot more than planning board. So I know this is sausage. I know that it's messy. I know you believe what you said tonight, but I don't think we're going to get this passed with a 2/3 vote if these two groups don't agree before the meeting, even if it requires an amendment, Don. So I know I hate the amendments too, but if you do it right up front, right away, and you say everybody agrees, you're going to have a better chance of getting it passed than getting there and just having this turn into a free-for-all as far as talking about these numbers that to some are just going to sound really strange, except for the 50% one. When you talk about a 2-story building where half of it is residential on top and half below, and you'd rather have a 2-story than a 3-story, I think that one will ring a bell with most of the audience, if I had to guess. So that's me, and then I think Andrew Pfaff wants to.
Sure. Yeah, so I just wanted Kathy to echo what you said. I think, thank everybody for all the hard work that's been done. It's a lot of work over many, many years. I'm 100% in favor of revitalizing our little downtown. But that being said, I've been disappointed in this discussion so far. I would like to see the planning board come a little more from a compromise. I see the latest changes made by the planning board as being a little bit restrictive, going a little bit too far in the other direction. And I actually proposed the same changes that EDC did in our last meeting without even knowing what their thoughts were, just as an outside person saying, I think this is a fair compromise. I think this would be something we could all go for and hoped everybody would. And it seems that the EDC was on board with that, although they have their own pieces. And I plead with the planning board to reconsider their positions, vote to amend with those 3 changes. I personally, speaking as a person not as advisory, won't support it as it currently stands, and would support an amendment on town meeting floor, which is just going to create chaos and confusion. It's going to hamper the chances of this to pass. My hope is that advisory, BOS, planning, and EDC can all vote to support this bylaw, the small changes proposed. And if we could do that, let's just not trip over the finish line. Let's come together, support these changes so that the town can move forward as needed and get this change done that we've been waiting for so long. I just think we're so close. Let's just all come together and, in a sense of community, make these small changes and move forward. Thank you. Marcy, do you want to go next? Is that okay, Don? Because she's on advisory.
Yeah, yep.
Hi, this is Marcy from advisory. I just wanted to make a couple comments about what's been said. Andrew and Kathy and I may disagree a bit, but I am in full support of the planning board's recommendations and really believe that what Mimi said is accurate. If you zone for what you want, and I believe that in downtown we really need to have a consensus on that.
No, I'll vote for whatever Rob proposes.
Sorry, I think
if I might, Chairman Morris, I thank you, Chris. You were unmuted. Thank you. Sorry, as the chair, I felt like I had to keep my members in line just a little bit. Marcy, my apologies.
Sorry, that's okay. I'll just repeat quickly. I believe that the changes that the planning board made were actually, they cleaned up the proposal that the EDC put forward, and those were very valid and extremely valuable changes. So I would disagree in regard to my advisory members on that, and believe that the planning board has set forth a plan that should be supported at town meeting should it go forward. Thank you.
Is it just Mr. Dennington with the hand up?
Yes.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Andrew.
I'm gonna lower my hand since he called on me. Okay, thank you. So, Kathy, you referred to this as making sausage, and my one point is if the planning board would be willing to change one of the ingredients, I think the one that could be improved is the 40%, 50% issue that I think Mr. Stein made a good point. And I think it addresses the very simple illustration of a two-story building where it would make more sense that to divide the second floor into 4 units rather than 3 units. And the way it stands right now, the planning board already has has a device in place where if it went from 3 units to 4 units, it would trigger a special permit process. I don't understand why you would want to entirely exclude the possibility of a project that had it was just 2 stories and had 4 units on the top, and it would go through a special permit process. Thank you.
Hey, Don, it's Lisa.
Yeah, Lisa.
So planning board's heard a lot of input. The Board of Selectmen are meeting tomorrow night. If you want, I can ask any other members of the Board of Selectmen if they'd like to add anything further. That's fine. I have some comments. I can save them to the end if you're okay with that, or do you want planning board to address some of the things that have been said at this point before we move further?
I'll ask the board. I think, well, I have a question. We had a proposal for the corner lot at Newton Street. And the current bylaw language allows for a 35-foot 3-story building, which essentially is what was proposed and not approved. If anyone knows, if what's being proposed by the EDC passes, does that automatically, not automatically, but does that open the door for the project that was disapproved last year or the year before to now be built, a 3-story building on the corner of that lot. Does anyone know that?
So Don, I'll just add one thing based on a spreadsheet that I had done, and it was actually verified with some information Karina supplied. The FAR on the prior building was 0.328. And it was at just over 33 feet high. And it initially came in at a higher FAR, 35.4, I want to guess and say, but because of the parking restrictions and whatnot, it went down to 32.8, and some of the space on the 3rd floor was dedicated to storage. And I know Mimi, you probably have more to add to that.
Yeah, well, I might be the only one on the planning board that senses this, but we keep talking about these 2-story buildings, but if it's allowed, what we see with zoning, if it's allowed, it will be built. So if we're allowing a 3-story building, and we all like 2-story buildings, we're gonna wind up with 3-story buildings. Did you want to speak, Mrs. Luttrell? Mr. Mills?
Yeah, Don, I'm kind of of the same mindset. I mean, if we want to change it that, okay, if you're going to do mixed use, it can only be a 2-story building, and then 50% of it could be, mixed use, residential, I'd be okay with that. Again, I was going off the mindset of what was actually suggested by, I think it was someone from the EDC, that it would be, retail on the 1st floor or something, and then office space on the 2nd, and then residential on the 3rd. And like I said earlier, if you're going with that philosophy, trying to keep, mixed use to just the 3rd floor then, or one of the floors, not 2/3 of the building, is what I was trying to accomplish. But if we want to limit it, I'd be open to say, okay, mixed use can only be 2 stories. And then the top floor can be residential. I'd be open to that. And then you lower but you still couldn't go 35 feet.
Yeah, right, all that would have to be changed. That would all have to be changed.
Yeah. If that's something everyone's open to, I'm good with that.
Chairman Morris, if I might, the current height restriction in the Business Village District is 3 stories and 35 feet. That's what's there right now for the zoning in the Business Village District. So this overlay language marries up exactly what is currently there. The one thing that this overlay does is it adds the mixed use component to it. So there has been limited development in our downtown, no new buildings since 1978. What we want to do is not go with that zoning, which right now, I will reinforce, it's 35 feet and 3 stories. We want to open it up so that we can see a new type of development to energize and bring new life to our downtown. So I think when we wrote our language and we brought in our consultant to offer feedback and did an analysis of other communities, we wanted to open up that doorway to a variety of different project types, not one in particular, and not to exclude one in particular, just to open it up for those conversations. So that's where I'm hopeful that these small changes, commercial on the 1st floor, residential up above in a potential 2-story building, could work and fit the character of the town, which is why from the EDC's perspective, we're hoping that there is some level of compromise from the planning board.
Rob, I think I just agreed with you. Said if we did commercial on the 1st floor, and then we said if it's going to be mixed use, it can only be a 2-story building, but it still couldn't be 35 feet tall, and then you'd have your 50% above. Is that agreeable?
If the planning board were willing to say, listen, we're going to change the language or change the percentage to that 50%, I think and I would have to take it to the EDC to see if they felt comfortable supporting it. And I hope they would, because that's one of the sticking points. And however the language ends up in there, I think that would be a good step towards the goal.
I'd support that.
But Rob, to be clear, are you saying that you would give up the ability to have a 3-story building?
Yeah, that makes no, I'm concerned about putting, with the intent being that we're trying to encourage more development, to put in more restriction on height than we already have. So again, if it's, I was saying that if it was a 2-story building, the 50% applied. If it was a 3-story building, the 40% applied. I'd be comfortable with that. I wouldn't be comfortable with, which, and maybe I'm misconstruing what Mr. Mills is saying, but I wouldn't be comfortable with reducing significantly from what is currently allowed. That doesn't make any sense to me.
My apology.
I was going with what everyone was talking about. A 2-story building with residential above. And I met you right where you wanted, where we were talking the whole time. And now it's getting changed again.
No. My interpretation was similar to Julie's, where the idea of 50% for a 2-story building fits, but we wouldn't preclude the opportunity for a 3-story building, which met the 40% requirement that the planning board already had. Julie, am I correct in that assumption?
I'm now on the same page with you. That's not what my understanding of what Mr. Mills was proposing. My understanding was that he is proposing that we reduce the number of stories permitted from 3 stories to 2 stories, which is unacceptable to me.
Yeah, yeah, I was, and please, if I might, my assumption was that if it is a 2-story building, it can meet the 50% requirement for residential. If it goes up to a 3-story building, it has to meet the 40% requirement as the planning board proposed, which gives us the 2-story building, commercial on the first floor, residential up above, and also allows the opportunity for a 3-story building, 2 of which can be commercial and the 3rd of which can be residential. That was my interpretation of what had been proposed.
Can I just clarify one little thing, that this is not an overlay? It's a new district?
Please forgive my word choice there. Yes, this new district.
Don, did planning board want to respond further? If not, Mr. Healy has his hand up.
Let's go to Marty.
Thanks, and thanks for everybody's comments. I have to say it has been, though, a bit disheartening listening to the conversation. Forget about what our master plan says, over the last fill in the blank years. Although the master plan has talked about mixed use, and as mixed use as a way to bring, a more diverse housing supply and a more equitable view of housing than has typically been in the case in a place like Southboro. And in some respects, the proof is in the pudding. I think, Rob, you said there hasn't been anything in the downtown since 1978. So whatever planning we've been doing hasn't been successful for moving forward in the downtown district. So the attempt here is to make some changes so that, in fact, there are improvements in the downtown district. And by the way, I'm sort of speaking as a selectman, but I live down there. And, it's kind of funny to listen to a lot of the comments that are made about what the downtown is like, because I think people need to walk down there or drive through there. It's a very different place than it's been described at an awful lot of these meetings. As I said, I think of everybody on these committees, I probably live the closest to downtown. But the thing that's particularly disheartening about it is the anti-housing bias that I think the town is going to be right now with what exists. The town is being asked to take a position that is anti-housing as far as I'm concerned, anti-diversity in housing, anti to everything that the state of Massachusetts has been talking about at the state level, the regional level, and otherwise. I mean, I've had back and forth with our state senator, who is one of the top proponents of doing exactly the opposite of what the changes made by the planning board would do to this article. What our state senator or our state rep are proposing are changes that allow diversity in our housing. The idea that we want to make sure that we have a 40% cap for residential because we're concerned about the housing. I mean, seriously, give me a break. We should be encouraging housing on a second and third level, not saying we can't have that. That's exactly that's outdated language for the changes that are trying to be made in the suburban and belt communities, like a place like Southboro. As I said, incredibly disheartening. The idea that we wouldn't include a requirement for affordable housing for the fourth unit because it might be a little bit of work for us. I mean, my goodness. That I can't be hearing that correctly, that we can't include this fourth unit, that the reason is because it would be onerous on some town employees to do the necessary paperwork and work. Seriously. The FAR, I've never understood that. It always seemed rather arbitrary. I think that was Kathy's word. It does seem arbitrary. I think the journey from 0.30 to 0.35 is a very short one. It's the least of my concerns of the three. The first two are the most important. As I said, if the planning board isn't willing to move, I really encourage you to move because I think the message that you're sending, if you don't, is a really, really bad one. If the planning board doesn't, I encourage the EDC to move to amend at town meeting. I've been very clear in our meetings that I will support that. I'll make these same arguments, maybe even more strenuously, to the body politic at town meeting. It's pretty clear, listening to Ms. Cook and Mr. Pfaff, that there is at least some sentiment on advisory that is contrary to the digging in that I see by the planning board. There's at least two selectmen. I think there's probably more than that, but there's at least two, Mr. Stivers and myself, who indicated support for the arguments that have been made by the EDC. I implore the planning board to compromise and to not dig in your heels on this, and for practical reasons. But again, I really think that there are substantive reasons that go well beyond practical, that you should reconsider the anti-housing stances that have been taken with the changes in this zoning bylaw. That's it for me. Thanks.
I would like to tune in on that, Marty, and I bristle when I hear you say anti-housing. Since I've been on the planning board.
Don, I'm glad about that.
Hey, I'm speaking, Marty. I'm speaking.
No, I understand.
No,
I understand.
there are affordable housing units in neighborhoods throughout this town that the planning board has approved. Going forward year after year, decade after decade. They're sprinkled all around town. So there's no anti-housing on the planning board, just the opposite. And if you want to call this a housing article, then call it a housing article, not an economic development article. And call it what it is. And maybe the people will go for it. Maybe the planning board will go for it. But since the last several years, this has been proposed as an economic development article, not a housing article. If you want to change it to a housing article, say it. And you should be aware of the progress that the planning board and other boards in this town have made toward affordable housing. There's no anti-housing in this town relative, certainly, to the planning board. And I take great offense for you to say that and have people hear it and not understand all of the work that and all of the projects and the units that the planning board has approved.
Don, I respectfully disagree with you. This is an
Okay, I
anti.
heard you. Let's move on to someone else. I'm done too.
Whoa, I can't respond to you?
It's not going to go anywhere, Marty.
I don't know if it'll go somewhere. It may. I'll respond to you. And that is the changes that have been made by the planning board are clearly anti-housing.
You already said that. I don't want to keep going over things that have already been said.
Okay, I will stand by my previous statement.
We respect your ability to say it, but as you can tell, it's not agreed to by me. And I have already said that. I won't say any more. Who's next?
Chairman Morris, I think we seem to be hitting on some of the similar topics. This is mixed use, and housing is a component of the mixed use. And I think I want to make sure that the planning board understands that the EDC has these concerns. These are things that we view as could be limiting factors to getting the real type of development that we want to happen. There are 3 small changes, 2 of which we think are pretty minor and can actually benefit the town. One of which is the change from 40 to 50% on the housing. The second of which is the raising of the units from 3 by right to 4 by right. Every developer is going to do their pro forma, and if they can bring us an affordable unit, we should try to grab it from a housing perspective. I'm hopeful that through this conversation, you realize that we want to work with you, and out of all the zoning, which is pages long, we have these 3 concerns, and we're hopeful that at least on 2 of them, there is some give and take with the planning board to understand that we want what's best for the community, and that there can be some benefits by 1, 2, or all 3 changes. So I think at the hope of moving this forward, maybe the planning board can have some discussion and take a position on each of those concerns that we brought forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Don, it's Lisa. Can I speak after Mimi? I see Mimi has her hand up.
Sure. Mrs. Littrell.
Thank you. I just also wanted to respond to the anti-housing. The mixed use has been marketed as to encourage commercial development downtown. And if you do any research on mixed use, if there's a low commercial threshold, you won't get commercial, you will just get residential. And that's fine if that's what we want, is to just have residential downtown and not have the small scale businesses, coffee shops and bakeries that have been sold over and over and over again when discussing this bylaw. It's been an issue in many mixed use developments that the residential is very easy to do, very saleable. So a lot of developers leave the bottom floor vacant and then just build the residential and have those be occupied on top. And I certainly don't think that's would be helpful for revitalizing the downtown to have vacant downstairs. So that's why the cap was put on the residential to encourage more commercial development. And I'm also concerned that these quote unquote compromises are being put forth from the EDC, but it's not actually from the committee, because there has, just to reiterate, there has never been a vote taken since June 22nd. And on June 22nd, it was 10% minimum commercial, 0.35 FAR. And so what's being proposed is not coming from the committee.
To respond to that, Ms. Littrell,
Rob, can you hold on? Let her finish, please.
Yes.
Then you can go. Thank you.
Which also makes me question the changes that we were sent on September 16th for lot coverage and minimum threshold by Julie. So those evidently also were not from the committee, although it was copied to the entire committee.
Yes, Chairman Morris, if I might. On September 24th, the EDC voted to allow our economic development coordinator to send a memo to the Board of Selectmen, which the planning board would have received as well. And then on October 5th, the EDC did take a vote to not accept the 3 changes and actually bring them forward. So to Ms. Luttrell's point, we have taken that vote. And those are concerns that the EDC as a committee have identified. We have brought them forward to the planning board because they are limiting factors. And as I said, there are 3 of them. We're hopeful that the planning board, who has been the means by which all of these restrictions have been put in place, will recognize from an economic development perspective and an affordable housing perspective that these things, these small changes, can actually benefit the community. That's what we are trying to do. The 50% will benefit the community. The ability to go to 4 units by right, as opposed to 3, when we had originally started at 8, I feel is a very good compromise. But once again, to answer your question, on October 5th, we did take a vote with identifying these 3 concerns.
Correct, Mr. Anderson. You did identify those concerns, but you did not take a vote on these positions that are being put forth as compromise positions from the EDC. You just voiced concerns, but you didn't say what you would like to see instead. And my next question is, if I could live with the 50%, and if the EDC would be willing to, if the other items could stand and the 50% would change, if that would work for the EDC.
I'd have to open that up to the EDC. As I said, we are so very close. I think, and I'm going to open it up right now to my committee. And I notice Julie has a hand raised. I feel that the 50% is a no-brainer. It's something that is going to benefit the town, especially if we're looking for residential on top of commercial. My members who are here, Julie, I know you have your hand raised. To Ms. Luttrell's point on the compromise and the adjustment to the zoning.
Thank you, Rob. And I do appreciate this discussion, and I do appreciate a willingness to compromise on the 50%. I do want to address the misconception that this is a housing bylaw. This is not. It is a mixed use bylaw that encourages certain uses. There's no chance that a developer would construct a building with the intent, especially if it can only be maximum 3 stories, of leaving a first floor vacant. That just would not happen. That is not economically viable. It is a risk from a liability standpoint. There's no way that would happen. Could a store potentially go out of business for a little while? Sure, that can happen. But that is certainly not the intent, and that would not benefit the proponent of a project to build a building without securing first and foremost a ground level tenant who's going to pay a lot more rent than a residential tenant is going to pay. So I just want to fray that misconception. I think that the 4 units as a practical standpoint makes sense. Again, if you picture a building, dividing it into 4 units as part of the 4 corners so that these units have windows in each side is just from a practical development standpoint, that's what makes sense. 3 doesn't. If you have, how can it'd be difficult to divide a building in a way, a second floor, say, for example, or a 3rd floor into 3 ways that makes a residential unit really work. And again, my biggest concern is that I think that discourages affordable housing. I think it actively discourages it. And again, I'm not saying that you're intentionally being anti-housing, because I don't think that is the case. I know there are a lot of people on this committee that care very deeply about it, but at the end of the day, we are behind our goals in affordable housing. And that's not anyone's fault. That's just the situation. And this could help us meet those goals. It can make for a better project. And my other concern, I mean, so if you have a building from an aesthetic point of view, from looking at it outside as a resident or whatever, why do we care whether it's 4 units or 3 units in there? What is the negative impact of having 4 residential units as opposed to 3 residential units? I'm just not understanding that. And so I think that's where I'm still stuck. It just doesn't make any logical sense to me. I think it's a deterrent to development that's still small scale. The building isn't going to be bigger because it's 4 units instead of 3 units, because it still has to fit within the same dimensional requirements, including the FAR, whatever that may be. It still has to fit within all those requirements. So the building itself isn't going to be better. It's just how it's divided by walls inside. So I'm not sure why we're getting so hung up on this when we can make a project that's potentially more viable and meets our affordable housing goals. So I know, Rob, that doesn't answer your question, but maybe it does. I think I appreciate the willingness to compromise the 50%. Like you said, Rob, I think that's a no-brainer. I think it just didn't make sense the other way. But I think I'm not fully there yet, but I mean, I'll think about it. Thanks.
Yep. No, Julie, thank you. And I think you brought up 2 of the 3 concerns that we had, which kind of put us, in ranking them of orders where 50% and then the 4 units are kind of the top 2 of them. I see one of my colleagues, Chris Robbins, with his hand raised. Chris, can you unmute yourself? Chris?
Here we go.
Okay, thank you.
Well, it's not midnight yet. And what's impressive is we've got a team of people who are listening, watching, and wondering what happened when we all say goodnight. But I want to say this town is very concerned about its future, and it's demonstrated by the arguments being put forward. And first of all, I want to say unequivocally to anybody had any doubts, this zoning board voted unanimously on that presentation of why we didn't support what went forward to the Board of Selectmen. There was no doubt, there were clear votes, and there was direction given to our coordinator to submit this as we have written it. And so let me put that aside. Full 100% unanimous support for what we presented. The other thing, we are so close, our opportunity is tonight. We cannot delay this and take it to town meeting and say, this town, top leaders in front of me and all of us that are listening, could not resolve this. It is unbelievable to think this. And I just want to be mindful that we don't have a reputation in the greater community about being able to collaborate. And I remember Judy Barrett saying at a planning board meeting after she submitted a report on how other planning efforts were going in other communities. I don't know, she says, I can't understand it, why this town can't collaborate. That's what she hears in the marketplace. And here we are again at the finish line to present something in a unanimous, positive way. And I can't imagine, Mr. Stivers presented this idea to me at the transfer station. He said, Chris, come on, go ahead, let's vote for this. We can make amendments later. And we all know that to make an amendment is going to take 3 years And I can't imagine going to town meeting and saying, we are votes right at the edge of making a decision that will help this town move forward and give us a downtown we need. But I want to say one more thing. We have spent close to 10 years talking about this topic. And when the Board of Selectmen assigned the EDC to lead this project, they became the sponsors of this endeavor. We met with more people, had more meetings, cross-talked with all the critical committees to come up with a proposal that at the last minute, the planning board changed a group, let me rephrase this. We came forward with all of the recommendations that the town asked for and Judy Barrett and other consultants put on the table. So it's not an individual thing here. We are representing the entire community and what they have asked for. It's now time to step onto the same boat and saying, we are together on this as a community, and the planning board, the advisory committee, and the Board of Selectmen will go to the town meeting with the unanimous presentation. I agree with Ms. Cook. I just can't imagine going with a partially baked pie here when we're right at the crossroads to make the right decision at the right time from a great team that I'm looking at. We should be celebrating tonight as we sign off and not wondering how we're going to make this thing work at a town meeting. Nobody's going to stand for it at town meeting. So I wish us luck.
Thank you, Chris. And I want to make sure that you have the opportunity. There had been a suggestion from Ms. Luttrell about the 50% being one of the compromises. How do you feel about that as the only compromise? Would you like to see a second? And I'm just asking you that question because I have you here, and one of my other members, John and Julie, have their hands up.
Excuse me, Mr. Morris, at some point are the Board of Selectmen going to be able to speak as well? I'd like an opportunity. Other members of my board have as well. So we've gone round and round with EDC a few times now, and at some point I would like the opportunity to speak as well, please.
Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand. I'm good.
No, you're right. You're right. I've lost control of this public hearing because we want to have everybody speak, but the order or the the ratio of people from the different boards needs to move a little bit more toward. If the selectmen want to speak, I want to make sure that we don't continue to, or we don't go over things that we've already necessarily covered. But I guess I'll just say this, or put it maybe in the form of a question. The planning board held a separate meeting on September, I think it was 20th, to do what we were asked to do, which was to review the three components: the warrant article, the map, and the design guidelines, which we did. And then we submitted those the next day to the Board of Selectmen. And it's my understanding that not only at that next meeting with the selectmen, but the meeting after that, that our recommendation was voted on 5-0 at both meetings to move forward with that language to the warrant. Ours was a recommendation, and we don't control the warrant. The selectmen do. And if I maybe I'm wrong, but I'm under the impression that the selectmen 5-0 twice voted for this. And now we're hearing from, and it's okay to, I guess, to change your mind, because that's what seems like most of the EDC is asking the planning board to do tonight, change our mind. And I guess it's okay to ask, but this seems to be twisting back toward, something that the planning board did outside of what we were asked to do. And then the selectmen went ahead and voted on it. I'll let you speak, Lisa.
Thank you. So that was one of the points, Don, thank you, that I wanted to take the opportunity to address is through this process, through the public hearing process, the planning board has had additional joint meetings. They gave recommendations in advance of writing the report. So I'm a little frustrated, I guess, tonight. I guess I'm on the opposite side of Mr. Healy in some senses tonight. I appreciate the collaborative nature that's gone into this, that we have all worked so hard to do, so hard to get where we're at tonight. And I'm very frustrated. But again, I appreciate the extra effort planning board made that they may not have ever done on another article that I'm aware of. They've attended joint meetings. They've had special meetings. They gave us their thoughts well in advance of town meeting, which they could have just written a report and we could have just had it out on town meeting floor. I'm discouraged. And I guess that's the toughest thing. This process has gone on for 2 years, well over 2 years. The Board of Selectmen have been involved for almost a year now on a very high level. And I'm very frustrated that 2 weeks before town meeting, here we sit. And we're going to battle this out. If this is a preview for town meeting, and this is what we're going to take on town meeting floor, we should all be embarrassed because we are doing a huge disservice to the taxpayers, arguing about, development and whatnot. I mean, the point of doing this bylaw, and pardon me, I'm just very frustrated. The point of doing this was to allow mixed use and by right. And now we're arguing about how much is too much and how much is too right. But I keep hearing it's semantics. It's a small amount that we're talking about. Then let's, as Marty has said before, you walk the walk, you talk the talk. Let's figure out. EDC has came in and said they have 3 things they want everybody to compromise on. Mimi offered a compromise. It's still not enough. I think at this point, as it stands today, I believe in this article and I support this article 100% enough to stand up on town meeting floor and fight for what the citizens of this town had said, including the abutters that have gone to these meetings. Mr. Hokinson, Mr. Miller, people voiced their opinions and planning board took those opinions. And I'm very frustrated that we can't find some type of compromise. My God, it's 2 years in. We have compromised throughout this. And I'm just very disheartened and very sad to see where we're at today. And I believe very much in what the Board of Selectmen supported. So if I had to vote today, I know Mr. Healy said that he would vote for amendments. If planning board supports, and again, planning board is your zoning branch. They're an elected branch. I take very highly what they say. This is what they do on a day-to-day basis. So if that being said, and we're talking about where we may or may not go tonight, then I would not be in support of amendments on town meeting floor that planning board didn't support. So again, I apologize for my rant, but as I sit here and see this all go down in flames tonight, I am beyond frustrated at the hours and hours and hours we have all put into this. So that being said, Mr. Morris, back to you.
Thank you. Anyone else, Board of Selectmen or Planning Board want to speak at this time? It's we've been at this, let's see, an hour and a half. We still have another public hearing to go through and some other business tonight. So we're going to keep going, but we can't keep going much longer. We have other things on our agenda.
Mr. Chair.
Hold on a second, Woody. Is
No
there
problem.
anyone else on the Board of Selectmen that would like to speak at this time?
Mr. Healy
All right.
has his hand raised.
Advisory. Oh, I'm sorry. What'd you say?
Oh, it looks like Mr. Healy has his hand raised.
Oh, okay. Marty.
I thought you would disenfranchise me for a minute, Don. Lisa, I hear, you know what? Frustration is part of the process. I mean, it is, this is, I actually, both the EDC, hopefully, and the planning board, hopefully, are realizing that there is ground between their respective positions. I mean, to the extent anything's frustrating is that heels are dug in and there's not real movement. I mean, it just seems to me that again, I'll put the FAR, I'll put that aside because I've never really understood it. And I've never understood why it found its way into zoning parlance anyway. But it sounds like folks can live grudgingly with the 0.30. Wouldn't be my choice. 0.35 wouldn't be my choice, but it's the nature of compromise. The affordable housing, the 4 to 3, the primary arguments that have been put forward for it have to do with extra work for the town. My goodness. Let's all take a deep breath and accept the fact that we are willing to impose some additional requirements on the people who work for the town so that we can have an additional affordable housing possibility in the downtown area. I mean, that seems to me, not a terribly long journey to take. And then you're left. I mean, if the I looked back at the minutes and the discussion from the planning board when the 0.40 came into being. And at the time, there was reference to that it came from looking at what other communities have done. I looked and I couldn't find another community that approached the zoning for a downtown district in that way. Now, if there is one, if there is in fact a couple of other towns, it'd be helpful for a couple of reasons. Number one, it would convince me that it wasn't just pulled from whole cloth. And number two, we could see whether or not it was effective in those towns. That's one of the nice things about relying on not reinventing the wheel every time. So again, the reference was made at the time that the zoning work from other towns was looked at, and that's where the 0.4 came from. So whoever could enlighten us tonight, that would be incredibly helpful, and particularly if we had the language from those other communities. Otherwise, it really feels two things. Number one, arbitrary. And number three, sorry, Don, I'm saying a word I said earlier, it's anti-housing, because any approach to mixed use, any rational view of it, in my view, is that you have commercial activity on the first floor and residential activity on the second and third floor. Now, is it possible that you could have a situation where an office could slip into a second floor, or you could have a suite of offices? Absolutely. But the intent of mixed use is commercial activity on the ground floor. From Boston on out to is commercial activity on the ground floor and residential on up. Here, the approach that's been taken, the zoning approach in downtown, has been allowing 3 stories. So it seems that a 0.4 is either a purposeful or a misstep to undercut the idea of having residential activity on the second and third floors of a mixed-use development. And as I said, if I could see what some other towns have done, that was the reference at the last meeting, that might be helpful. I find it hard to believe that effective mixed-use efforts in various communities use that sort of approach. It's been said by an awful lot of people that we're really close, but it's going to take some movement by both sides. That's the nature of compromise. And all I hear are people digging in their heels, saying we were right the first time, so we're not going to change our minds. Please think about changing your minds and moving a little bit so that, in fact, instead of having folks on advisory who are maybe outright opposed or at least uncomfortable, we've got advisory completely behind it. So instead of the Board of Selectmen, and Lisa, the one correction I'll make is that, yeah, I voted 5-0 to advance this to the warrant, but I've been pretty clear at every meeting we've talked about that I'm not in support of the changes that the planning board made. So there's nothing new. This is not a new discussion by me tonight. So please, EDC and planning board, move a little bit. Instead of digging in your heels and saying, we want to be right. We were right the first time. We want to be right tonight. Compromise. Let's get this done for the good of the town, period.
Don, can I go next from advisory?
Let me just try one thing.
Okay.
What I'm hearing is, and it's obviously not, none of this is popular. 40% on the second floor, 50% on the third floor, 4 units by right, 0.30 FAR. Those 3 things, as I just stated, is a blend of compromise. I've been hearing 40% second floor, 50% third floor, 4 units by right, 0.30 FAR. Those 3 changes, 2 out of the 3 would be changes, would require compromise by the planning board and the EDC. We can, if we can get people to sign up to that, then we're done.
May I make a motion for our board to take a vote on that, sir?
Well, Don, before you do that, I don't think anybody understands the 0.4, 0.5 you're talking about.
But I can make it.
That's not what Mr. Mills said. He said if it's a 2-story building, he'd go with the 50%. If it was 3-story, Ms. Conley said you got to, so it was
Then it would be the
3 stories,
40%.
40%. So that's what they were saying as far as a compromise there.
Yes, a 2-story building would be
50%.
50% on the second story with 50, it would be a 50%. And if it was a 3-story, it'd be a 40%, sir.
I said it wrong. Thank you, Kathy. 40% would be the third floor. If it's only a 2-story building, it would be a 50%.
Well, you're still saying it a little bit weird, but if you're saying what we just said, okay.
I think I've heard all of my members speak, so it seems like that's a reasonable compromise, and I think it gets us that much closer to having a unanimous position going forward. Thank you very much for making that suggestion. John, I heard you say you wanted to make a motion.
First off, I just want to thank Ms. Luttrell for even entertaining a compromise before about 15 minutes ago when it all started going sideways from there. And I thought we were taking a vote on it then. I'd like to make I like how that's what you said. I'd like to make a motion. I don't know if it's for just my committee or both committees, a motion for the EDC to accept 50% with the 2-story building, 40% with a 3rd-story building, and 4 units into the draft and keep the FAR at 3.0. Would that be a fair way of saying it, Rob?
Yeah, yes, that's exactly how
It's
I was.
It's 0.30, not 3.0.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Don,
I told you I want huge. No, a 0.30, please.
Yeah.
Change that. Go ahead.
I second that.
Okay, so I've got a motion and a second from my EDC board. I'm going to go through in the people that I see.
Rob,
John.
You can make sure there's no
me.
discussion.
Oh,
Rob.
sorry. Please forgive me. I always forget to do that.
I
Discussion.
think, excuse me, I think thanks to Kathy's comment, we need clarity on that 50% and 40%.
Don,
If it's just a 2-story building,
It's
what's
50.
the second floor?
No more than 50.
No more than 50.
Right.
If it's a 3-story building, what's the second floor?
Second and third combined are no more than 40. Is that correct?
Okay,
The
thank you.
building total is no more than 40, but yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
And 0.30.
Yes.
0.30. Yes, John, thank you. Thank you for it took a while to get there, but I think
We still need to have discussion and a vote, Rob.
Yep. Any discussion for my EDC colleagues?
We saw a little note there from Mr. Dennington.
Yeah, I was just
It's
trying.
9-0, people. Sorry.
Would you want to look at what he's proposing? You said draft language, Andrew?
Yeah, what I did was because I think this is the point that everyone is coming around to.
Yep.
Could I share my screen and just
Yes,
see if
please.
this is?
Yep, please do.
Yes, you should be able to do that.
So is that what? It's not that on the third, there would be a different percentage requirement for each floor. It's that there would be a different percentage requirement if it's a 3-story building and then a different percentage requirement if it's a 2-story building.
Correct.
Yep. I think that it fits the motion that John made. Yes.
Okay.
And then the other one is a simple 3 to 4 change. So do I have any discussion from my EDC colleagues?
No,
No.
nothing net new to add.
Yep. So I'm going to take a vote of my EDC colleagues as I see them on the screen. Chris?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Chair is yes, unanimous. Thank you. I think.
Hold on,
here.
we're nowhere near done
Oh,
yet.
Planning board to vote too.
That was our.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, this is just our,
Yes.
what we
support.
think.
Now we
Yes.
know what you think. Okay, who's next? Selectmen or Kathy or advisory?
We don't have a quorum. We're not voting tonight.
Okay,
Mr.
Lisa?
Morris, we're meeting tomorrow night. We're short a member tonight, and but I think based on who's here and the discussions that have been had, I'm sure that it's probably going to be fine, but we'll take a formal vote tomorrow night.
What might be good about this is that nobody really likes it, but I was trained a long time ago in negotiations that you have a good negotiation when nobody likes it. I'll open it up to the planning board. We'll start with Mr. Mills, your opinion.
Just want to be clear. So if we do go to the 4 units by right, one of them would definitely be affordable, correct?
Everyone's saying yes.
I hope so. It better be.
I believe that's in the zoning article. I believe the percentage is 12.5% of any housing development has got to be affordable, and you round up. So if it's 4 by right, 12.5% rounds up to 25%, 1 out of the 4.
That's right. And that's section 184, 8.12 F. Hold on, I just lost it. Sorry. I'm sorry, G5.
Showing it on the
On
screen.
the screen.
Okay, I have nothing else to add.
Mr. Stein?
I'm in agreement with the proposed changes by Mr. Dennington.
Mrs. Latrell?
I'm in agreement with the changes that Mr. Dennington had put forward on the screen. I'm still concerned about making sure an affordable unit counts towards our inventory and the paperwork that's involved by that being handled by the building inspector. I think that she's pretty out straight as it is now, and throwing, affordable housing requirements on her, I think is a lot. But if the rest of the planning board goes along with it, I'll I'll hold my breath and vote for it and hope that it works out.
If it's any comfort, Mimi, what I've seen with our current town planner, there's a whole lot of teamwork performed between the building inspector, the conservation agent, town planner, to get things done. They tend to share some of the workload or help each other with that type of stuff. And of course, the building inspector is not under the planning board. She's under the Board of Selectmen. They think she's overworked. I'm sure they'll vote to give her a big raise and a big staff. Mrs. All set, Mrs. Latrell? Mrs. Houlihan?
Fine with the proposed recommendations.
Okay. You'll notice that I didn't ask if anybody was happy with it, but we did. So, and I, as am I, to move forward with this. So we'll entertain a motion to go along with the proposed language by Mr. Dennington. Mr. Miller.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Anyone from the public?
Mr. Morris, can I just add one thing?
Yes, please.
I will get a new draft, well, I guess it's not a draft anymore, a new copy around, an updated copy of the downtown district out tomorrow. As well, I'll work with Mr. Purple based on these comments tonight to get an amendment done as well, so we can get that up on the website and citizens can be prepared for that as well. And we'll get that done and shot around tomorrow as well.
After the planning board's vote, I have a question, but I also want to report on a conversation I had with the town clerk.
Don,
so,
I'd like to
Mr.
make.
Chairman.
Don,
go ahead, Mimi. I'll get to you in a second, Chris.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, as well as the language that Mr. Dennington had put up on the screen on the 50%, 40%, we're also voting to have 4 units by right. Is that correct? Instead of 3. Okay.
Yes. Chris?
Yeah, I want to say, if the group will allow me to say, we really, when we go out tonight, to thank the rest of this whole community that has participated for so many years in various meetings, interviews, the various committees that have held joint meetings, going through the frustrating moments, listening to people with some good ideas, great ideas, crazy ideas. But we're here and we have no one else but really to thank the people who have given us the insight and made a request to us. The time is now. And I think that's what we're doing. And it's a pleasure to be a part of this collaborative vote and being sure that we all take the time to thank the entire community who has participated in this.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor for the planning board to go along with the proposed amendment. Any other questions, comments from the board or the public?
Yes, Mr. Paul Semino would like to speak.
Mr. Moderator, good evening.
Good evening, Don. Good evening, everybody. Did I unmute successfully? I don't.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Appreciate it. The thumbs up, Jesse. This has been quite the extraordinary exchange. I will say I've listened to it closely for reasons that I think Lisa articulated very strongly. I might not have. I don't think I could have articulated them stronger. I don't. As moderator, I don't have 1% of an opinion about any of this, other than the manner in which it comes before the voters at what will be a difficult town meeting, being inside but COVID restricted. We've been outside and COVID restricted. We've never been inside and COVID restricted, and there is an incredible amount of planning as we speak going into how to pull that off. What I believe is happening tonight at least in the last 15 minutes, gives me great anticipation for a successful town meeting, where 15 minutes ago I did not have that. So for what it's worth, I appreciate all the, every box with a person in it that I see on my screen, which is currently 13, but I know there are more. I appreciate everything that's happened tonight and your leadership, Mr. Chairman Morris, in getting us to this point. So as moderator, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I don't think we've had so much discussion or comments unrelated to the motion on the floor in a while, but we'll get to it. Any other questions or comments from the public or the planning board based on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? What?
No additional hands raised in the attendees.
Okay. Seeing none, all in favor, Morris, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yeah.
Houlihan, yes.
Thank you. Now I have a question. Actually, Jim Haggerty called me and he told me that he intends to send some type of a card out to all the homes in town, letting them know that there's actually a town meeting on November 1st and directing them to, the different links on the websites to get informed as to what will be within the town meeting. And one of those is the map, which we haven't discussed tonight and don't intend to. But we're going to make a little revision to the map relative to a legend, get that to Jim, and then I think he said by the end of the week he was going to try to mail it out. So I just want to let people know that, and Sarah will be, she's the keeper of the map. The question I have is, who is going to present this article at town meeting?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, it's on the Board of Selectmen's agenda tomorrow night to discuss who's presenting what articles.
Okay. What about the EDC? They are the genesis for this.
Mhm.
Does the EDC have any intention of a joint presentation, any part of a presentation?
We're going to follow the lead of the Board of Selectmen. I think with what we've done tonight, we are in support of the zoning as it is. So we will actually follow and fulfill any role necessary from the Board of Selectmen, whether it's sitting there and being quiet or presenting something as well. So we are at everyone's disposal to help in any way.
Donna, if I can add, I'm sure in our discussion tomorrow night, a joint presentation will certainly come up.
What I think the planning board needs to know is who is going to present it and what is the context, the contents of the presentation. And I'll ask Mr. Semino, Paul, are we going to have a dry run?
I don't call it that, Don. I am planning to have a sort of a meeting of those who are presenting articles ahead of town meeting. Yes, to work out the kinks, to establish who's presenting, how they're presenting, time limits, etc. If that's what you're referring to, then yes.
Okay. Normally what we would see is if it's a single presenter, then that person knows who he or she is and knows the contents of the presentation. If it's a joint or a team presentation, then each player needs to know their role, their sequence, and the contents of their presentation and make sure it jives with each of the others.
Yeah, I intend to make sure that all of that is well orchestrated ahead of time. I don't want to bog down over process.
As a former planning board member, we know that you will have all of that under full control, Paul.
Thanks, Don. Listen, not to tell stories, but the first time we brought medical marijuana to town meeting, we got blown up within 10 minutes. I'm very familiar with the need to come unified. So again, kudos to everybody.
Is there anyone else that wants to speak relative? I know people wanted to speak, and we just went straight to what I thought would bring it to a vote. Is there, I want to make sure that anyone that wanted to speak can, but if not, if you can hold it, then we will be able to move on to our next agenda items.
Chairman Morris, if I might, I would like to just make sure I do the procedural element, which is to close the EDC's meeting. We're obviously here to answer any questions if any pop up, but I'm hoping people are finished with hearing us speak, and that if so, maybe I might be allowed to take a motion to adjourn from one of my members.
A motion to adjourn the EDC's meeting tonight?
Second.
Okay, I'm going to go through my group as I see him. Alan?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
John?
Yes. And thank you, everybody that's done all this work for so long. Just wanted to throw that out there while I could still speak.
Yeah, I think I concur. And I also say yes to the adjourning. So Chairman Morris, thank you, and the planning board and the Board of Selectmen for everything. And thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Mr. Morris,
Lisa.
if I may adjourn as well.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Mr. Stivers, is there a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Stivers,
Yes.
Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Mr. Morris, I'm happy, and I.
Ms. Brascio, I'm happy to. Again, thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Good
Okay,
night
we're gonna.
Good night from us too. We'll see you soon.
Okay, Kathy, thank you. See you soon.
Okay.
Okay, next item on the agenda is continued public hearing, 325 Turnpike Road, Ken's Foods expansion, major site plan approval. This is continued from September 27th. We also have a continued public hearing, 325 Turnpike Road, Ken's Foods expansion, special permit for lower impact development. This is continued from September 27th, 2021. It's almost 10 o'clock. I definitely want to, who do we turn this over to? You, Scott, first?
Yes.
You're on mute. You're on mute. Still on mute. I want you to know that the town planner has discussed this tonight's portion of the public hearing with me. But she's not here tonight. So I guess I'll lean a little bit more on Sarah and you to help update the public and the board as to where we are with this application. Did you want to go first, Sarah? Or let Scott start, and
Don?
then you can clean up?
Don?
Or Bill, you, what?
Don, this is Andrew.
Yes, Andrew.
I make a motion, we continue the public hearing for the downtown district bylaw.
No, thank you.
Second.
To when? You want to continue the public hearing for downtown district? When are we continuing it to?
To November 15th.
November 1st.
Oh, November 1st. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, second that.
Sorry, I jumped way out of sequence here. Ken's Foods is really taking a beating tonight. So motion's been made and seconded to continue the downtown district public hearing to November 1st. Paul, what time does the town meeting start?
7
Anybody?
p.m.
Okay, 7.
Yep.
Sorry, Don. Yeah, I had muted
Okay,
PM on the 1st of November.
7 PM? Okay, so usually we'll huddle up at like 6:30 then?
Yeah, so it's 6:30, November 1st, 6:30.
Jesse?
Yeah, seconded.
Oh, okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yeah.
Houlihan, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Don.
All right, well, now we're back into the public hearing for 325 Turnpike Road. Scott, you're on. Or did you want to go, Bill?
No, I'll let Scott start, and I'll
Okay.
address some things at the end.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Looks like I found my unmute button. Yeah, to summarize where we are, we have received, of course, comments from Fuss and O'Neill. We also have received comments from Fuss and O'Neill related to the Conservation Commission filings and also Lucas Environmental pursuant to the same. We are in the process of putting together a revised set of plans in response to comments. I'd like to do that sort of in a uniform set of plans to both the board and the commission. And we expect to be doing that in approximately in a week's time, Monday, early next week. Yeah, you would see new plans and responses to comments from us. We also have received a notice from Ms. Gillespie from the Open Space Preservation Committee we're on their agenda for Thursday morning this week, so we can get the wildflower issue hopefully resolved. We have a proposal for placement of all of the 33,000 plus square feet of wildflower replanting that would be required that's being displaced by the proposed addition. I think it's important for the board to know that we met with the Conservation Commission most recently, and they are in support of the proposed level spreader as a low impact practice. We're going to move ahead with that option that we had presented in light of that, and we are expecting that the planning board also would see that as a favorable practice in terms of spreading roof runoff, clean roof runoff onto lawn area where we can, so it can then infiltrate more naturally into the ground. We also received, and I know we don't want to take too much of your time tonight, but we also received today a comment letter from, I believe, Attorney Stevens, associated with some of the neighbors that have some concerns on the project. Some of the items brought up are those that are related to site design and some of the waivers that we requested, but there are other issues also. I believe that perhaps Attorney Pizzoni would like to speak briefly about that. Is that right, Bill? We haven't had a chance to talk too much since we received that memo.
Yeah, I'm not really going to address Nathaniel Stevens's letter tonight because I didn't see it until late this afternoon. We have prepared, Scott has prepared a draft relative to some of the issues. I did reach out to both the abutter, and he's the attorney for Deb and her husband. So it's the one abutter really property. And he had submitted some stuff for the ZBA as well. So I knew who he was, but I did not know he was involved until last week when I heard it from the Board of Health, which I thought was strange. And so I reached out to Deb to find out if she was being represented by counsel because I needed to talk to them and nobody was getting back to me. And she did tell me at that point that she's represented by counsel and I should deal with him, and that's fine. And that, I think this comes to part of what I wanted to discuss as well. I prepared a memo to submit relative to a lot of the email that Deb submitted the last time at the last hearing, and the fact that Ken's was painted as not cooperating with the neighbors and the abutters, and that's blatantly not true. I want to put out there that, you know, in my memo, I'm not going to go through it tonight with you, but I will submit it to you tomorrow or the next day, because it's about 6 pages long. It speaks to the efforts by Ken's, working with the community, working with the different departments, the building inspector, the abutters, Deb in particular, and another abutter that was vocally involved since the new facility has been in operation. You know, and in my memo, I speak to the fact that, you know, Ken's, when they were addressed with the noise issue, when they first came in to go to 24/7 operation, and for the original expansion, did the testing, worked with the community, came to a resolution with the community on what needed to be done on the backside of that property at great expense to them. But they saw the issue and they addressed it because it was their issue, okay? We didn't even hear from anybody until I was ready to, I think it was just before we were getting ready to the zoning board last year, but it was really more in the latter part of 2019, not 20, when, you know, when we first submitted. And when I spoke to Deb, that was the first time she told me that she was still having, she was having the issues and that there were issues out there on her site. We took time to meet with her, move trucks around, try to address issues to reach her problems. And, you know, we ultimately came to the conclusion that with her and the other abutter that was vocal, that we'd run a sound study. Ken's would pay for it, although they weren't required to, but they would pay for it because they wanted to get to the bottom of the issue and find out if the noise and the issues that Deb was experiencing were solely related to Ken's. It was our belief in the beginning that it's unfortunate because Ken's is 1,800 feet away from her house, but Route 9 and 495, she's sandwiched in between them. And when you're at her house, you can hear Route 9, especially with the traffic around dinner time. And it's pretty intense. So, you know, we want to make sure that if Ken's going to do anything, that it's done with the cooperation of the abutters, that they do participate with us through this process and they respond timely. When we went to the ZBA this past spring, we committed to working with them still and to address these issues and to address issues raised by the Board of Health, which I'll have the Board of Health talk about in a minute, and as well as others. And we scheduled a meeting with her. She was designated the point person for the abutters because she was the abutters to meet right after the ZBA hearing and decision to start a process to find out what her expert has to say about our expert's analysis, what was done, taking into account for the fact that the report and the analysis was done focusing primarily on the refrigeration units because that was something that was determined by everybody that it was probably the issue because there was no real complaint about backing up. It wasn't that often that you would hear the buzzes by a butter. It wasn't the loading docks or anything like that. No other circulation at the site. And we tried to schedule a meeting, and because of the experts being out of town and everybody else taking their quasi-COVID vacations, we didn't get to a meeting until the early part of July, at which time we met, and we agreed to provide them with the data from their expert. He asked us for it, said that they would get back to us, and we told them that we would be filing with the planning board by the end of the summer or, early September, and we'd like them to respond as quickly as we could. They could. We didn't hear anything from them until we were at your hearing, the last in September. And Scott, I had our expert.
We're losing you, Bill.
Yeah. Okay. When after that hearing, I asked our expert to reach out to their expert, Deb's expert, to find out what the status was on the types of mitigation he might propose and or, what we could do to move the ball along so that we can get there. He was told that he hadn't even been commissioned by Deb and that after that meeting, he was put on hold and wasn't to proceed with anything. And that's kind of the same thing with her attorney. She was well aware and he was well aware that we were having a hearing back in September, but he had not been retained either. And the point I'm trying to get across is, we understand that Deb, what she's hearing is real. We just want to find out if it's Ken's, and if we're going to do mitigation, that it's the correct mitigation to address the issue. And it's not just throwing money against the wall. It isn't going to take care of anything. A quick aside, when we were out there in July, Deb did turn to us and say, see, you hear that noise? That's the noise that we hear all the time. And her own expert said, well, that's Route 9. And it was Route 9. And I'm not saying that we can't be contributing to it, but let's find out if it's us and what we can do to address that.
Bill,
I'll get my memo. I'll get my memo to you.
This is all good. And I think what the board is benefiting and the public is benefiting from it, but until we get the revised plans and some more of the stuff that's out there, we've probably gone as far as we need to with the noise issue tonight, and look forward, I guess, to getting your memo. And when we continue the hearing, hope that you'll be there and give us an overview of all of this, and maybe have made some progress with the neighbor and their consultants. But I think you've made your point, is certainly with me, that there's a component of this project that's noise, and it's not a minor component. It's something that needs to be addressed.
The only other thing I'd point out is, because it was raised at the last meeting, and I'd like to put it to bed, is the fact that she felt that section 174.12 C1 was applicable here relative to the loading docks having to be covered. And I took the opportunity after the hearing to go and meet with the building inspector, who is the interpreter of the zoning bylaws. And her interpretation was the same as mine, that 50 feet from a residence district is from the actual loading docks. It's not from a component of the sewage treatment system or the back end of a building that's 500,000 square feet in size. And she further noted that this was all vetted by your board during that original site plan review as to whether or not those needed to be covered or not, and it was determined that it was not. So I'd like to kind of put that to bed. The only other issue is that when I spoke to the Board of Health agent, I followed up with her right after that meeting as well, because I wanted to understand her email a little better. And she advised me that she had not had any other complaints herself personally other than Deb, and that her reference to the Neary School was only made because it was within a quarter of a mile as the crow flies from the Ken's facility, but she had never had any complaints from the Neary School or anybody over there as well. I did ask her if she would follow up with people at the Neary School to see if there was an issue, because she would be the appropriate person to do that. And she said that she would. When I spoke to her this morning, she said she had not had any further contact with them yet, but that it was on her to-do list and that she would look into it. I also asked her if she had had any further contact with DEP, which she spoke about at the last meeting. And she said she has not, and that they had said that, they would look into it. And it was really a jurisdictional issue for them. Okay, other than that, I know we all want to move on. I won't address Monty's memo because that was the only other one. I'll wait until the next hearing, and I'll get this to you. And if anybody's interested, the Sox are winning 9-3.
The best part of your presentation right there, Bill. Thank you.
Yeah, I figured you'd like that, Don.
It's a good ending or continuation. Who's next? Back to you, Scott, or are you all set?
But unless there's any questions, anything anyone has thought of on the board, Mr. Chairman, it's up to you, please.
Mr. Bourne, you all set?
Yes, I'm all set till next meeting.
Okay. Sarah, what do we have? The approval period runs to November 8th. We're meeting on November 1st, but it's pretty much a 30-minute meeting focused just on one agenda item, which is the downtown district.
Yes, so there was an extension requested. So that's, I think, signed and just waiting for your signature. Scott, did you get that back to Karina
Yes, I
yet?
did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, last week.
Okay, great.
Midweek, I think. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I thought you already had that information that we had requested or extend. There we go. Yeah, that's my.
Here we go.
Yeah, that I believe Karina did tell me about it, and the reason I was kind of leading into, can you put it on the screen?
Sure.
So because this is the language of the motion, which would be to extend the approval period to November 19th, which would then allow us to continue the public hearing to November 15th.
Yeah, so that should be to matters that shall be extended to November 19th.
That's the Friday after the Monday.
Okay.
We usually do that. Any questions or comments, Mr. Mills,
moved.
Mrs. Luttrell?
I don't want to skip ahead of anyone else if.
Oh, sorry. I have no questions right now. Thank you.
I just have a couple of things I'd like to put out there that can be addressed at the next meeting. The first is the stand of trees that's going to be removed. I would like to see them either transplanted or replaced because they may have been, a condition of a previous site plan. It should just remove them. I don't think is right. And the second thing is that section of the bylaw regarding loading that Mr. Attorney Pizzoni referred to. It says if located within 50 feet of a residential district or if used frequently at night, loading spaces should be enclosed. So maybe that can be addressed at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Houlihan.
If Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Hold on.
Oh,
Did you say no?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Did you say nothing, Mrs. Houlihan? Well, I'm trying to entertain a motion to, or get a motion to continue the, extend the approval period.
So moved.
Okay.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to extend the approval period to November 19th, 2021. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes.
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Luttrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Okay, and the next thing would be a motion to continue this public hearing to November 15th at 7:05 p.m.
So moved.
Seconded.
Actually continue these hearings to November 15th at 7:05.
So moved.
Yep. Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes.
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell,
Houlihan, yes.
Okay, Scott, did you want to, One more.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to, I wasn't trying to take you off track. I guess I'll get back on track with Ms. Latrell. I just wanted to make sure I understood the trees that you're talking about, are that line of arborvitaes that are on the east side of the building. Is that the ones you're talking about? Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood this, make sure I was correct on the standard trees. Thank you. That was it.
Okay, we've continued the public hearing. We've extended the approval period. I think you know what the town planner is expecting to receive between now and then. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you. You guys are very hardworking tonight. It's a tough night for you guys. Thank you.
Bill, what's the score?
9-3.
Still, what inning?
Top of the fifth.
I liked it better when Jesse told us to score.
Okay, gentlemen, we'll see you on the 15th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a discussion item, Chestnut Meadow subdivision, release of lots 2, 3, 5, and 6. Any help on this one, Sarah?
I'm sorry, I'm not terribly familiar with this particular one, but I can bring over.
There would be a document which I didn't have time to look for. Did you find that, Marnie? Release of lots?
You guys see the plan?
Well, we'll
Yes.
start with the plan, which shows lots 2, 3, 5, and 6. 2, 3, 5, and 6. 2, 6, 2. Three is okay. 2, 3, 5, and 6. Everybody see those?
Yes.
These right here, lot 2, lot 3, lot 5, lot 6?
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll try and
I
edit it.
see Attorney Connors is here. Is he here to speak to this?
I am.
Yes.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
Oh, George, good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Did you want to speak to it? Go ahead, George.
I think I can. Lots, all the lots had been released except for 2, 3, 5, and 6 back in February and March of 2019 when Mr. Feldman appeared. There was some discussion as to changing lots 5 and 6 with the open space lots to 2 and 3. And that was not ever acted upon or even actually requested as a fact. So lots 2 and 3 just got sort of held back for whatever reason. 5 and 6 were open space lots that were approved for a period of 3 years. And that period has expired as of early November 21. I'm sorry, November 20. The plan was approved on 11/12/17. So the 3 years would have taken us to November 20th. So lots 5 and 6 now are subdivision lots, and they're requesting that lots 2, 3, 5, and 6 now be released, which would be the totality of the project.
And did you submit a request for release of lots?
Yes, Mr. George Gallagher from Chestnut Meadow on October 7th, 2021, requested those to be released in a letter to Ms. Quinn. I was on vacation and I'm aware of that, and that letter did go out.
You looking for that, Marnie?
Obviously, there would be something to trigger this meeting.
There would be something what?
There would be such a communication to trigger the meeting.
Yes. I just want the public and the board to see that document that would then prompt a motion to release the lots.
Can't see this, correct? Oh, you don't see anything?
No,
All right, let's try it again. Sorry, it said I was sharing.
There's
Try
all
again.
black.
You see anything now?
Nope.
Very strange. It's saying that I'm sharing it. I'll try my.
is there a way you could beam it over to Sarah?
I
It's
think I
in
better
the,
have reception. See, you know,
yeah, I can try. It's in the Dropbox, right?
yeah, I don't understand why it's not sharing.
Yeah, that's weird because you've been sharing.
I've been sharing the
already
whole
with
time.
No, yeah, with no problem.
Can you see it, Marnie?
Yeah, I have it up on my screen. So I mean, I've never had problems with my Zoom. So that's why I don't know what's going on.
If you could read it to us, it's a one-page.
Sure.
We're just looking for the email, right?
Well, there's the letter. Do you want the letter or the email?
There
That's
should be a request for a release. Is that in
Yeah,
the
so
form
there's
of a
a-
letter?
There's both. I'm gonna try Marnie real quick. I don't know if it'll work, but
Happy to read it.
Why don't you go ahead and start reading it, George?
Chestnut Meadow Realty Trust is the heading, October 7th, 2021, to Karina Quinn, Town Planner, down at South Road, dear Karina. We're requesting to be placed on the agenda of the next planning board meeting. Oh, there you go.
Go ahead, keep going, George.
Oh, all right. To request the release of the remaining lots in the Chestnut Meadow subdivision. We're seeking the release of lots 2, 3, 5, and 6 as shown on the definitive subdivision plan entitled Definitive Plan, Lotting Plan of Chestnut Meadow in Southboro, Mass, prepared by Cornerstone Engineering, Inc., dated March 21st, 2017, revised through October 30th, 2017, and approved on November 21st, 2017. That plan was endorsed April 30th, 2018 by the Planning Board, recorded with the Worcester Registry of Deeds in Plan Book 934, Plan 92. We're requesting the lots be released from the certain covenant between Chestnut Meadow Realty Trust owner and said Planning Board dated April 19, 2018, recorded with the Registry of Deeds in Book 58746, page 11. Please let me know the date and time of the hearing. Sincerely, George Gallagher.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, we can entertain a motion to release lots 2, 3, 5, and 6.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Leanne, yes.
Is that all you need, George?
Sorry to take so much time, yes.
No, when Karina comes back, she'll probably confirm the vote and take the necessary action.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for your patience.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Next item on the agenda is a discussion item, 156 Northborough Road, site plan compliance. Who do we have for that one?
we do not have anyone. In
Mr. Quinn?
attendance. He was here.
I'm here.
Oh, you are here. Great.
Mr. Quinn, at our last discussion on this, you indicated that the owner or parties thereof had some type of a relationship with Bigelow Nurseries?
I guess they had contacted them about purchasing some plants. I'm not sure where that went.
Abundance of caution, as I stated before, my son works there, so I'll
Okay.
turn the chair over to Mr. Mills.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Mr. Quinn, thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
So I don't know, Sarah, do we have an update first? I mean, I know you're kind of filling in for Karina, but
Yeah, I'm sorry. Again, this is not one that I'm terribly familiar with in terms of the updates over the past couple of weeks.
okay. So Mr. Quinn, I do know that there were a number of emails back and forth with the town lawyer, the town attorney, and it sounded like that the amendment to the approved plans were required, correct?
I guess that's still up for discussion. I'm going to be submitting to the planning board in the next week or so a formal request for what I would call a insubstantial change to the approved plan. We're not changing the size of the building. We're not changing the use of the building. The only thing we're going to change is words on the protocol that currently call as tenants. We're going to call them as owner or / occupants. So there's very little change other than the way it's managed. So we're not changing the parking, the zoning, the use, the setbacks, the size of the building. We're not changing any of that. So we believe it's an insubstantial change, and we will submit a formal request for the next hearing.
Okay. I imagine that would go back to the town attorney to make sure it's in alignment with his opinion from before. So I guess we'd look forward to receiving that.
Yes. Just to give you an update, so the other outstanding issue is the plantings. There were quite a few cultivars that were planted. We're in the process of having those removed and replaced with native species. And in fact, I'm on the agenda with the Open Space Committee meeting this Thursday and trying to work with them to come to a resolution and install the native species as was approved in the original drafts and approvals.
Great.
One thing that we will be looking for is, we're kind of stuck, in neutral here. We will be looking for the occupancy permit. That's most important to us now. The building is 100% done. The only two outstanding issues are the way it's governed, whether it's a condominium or single owner, and then the plantings.
Okay.
So, but then my next meeting will be with the Open Space Committee on Thursday. And then shortly thereafter, I'll be sending the planning board a formal request with the proposed changes in the approved protocol that was approved and recorded at the Registry of Deeds.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you can get that to Karina as soon as possible, that'd be great. So, because like I said, she's probably going to take it to the town attorney.
Yeah.
Again, so
okay.
Have any delay for you. Any questions from the board? Jesse?
None for me.
Mimi?
Nope.
Marnie?
No.
Okay. Mr. Quinn, anything else?
That's it for tonight.
Okay, we'll look forward to talking to you in the near future.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks for the update, appreciate it. So as our fearless chair coming back from watching the game?
A peaceful transfer of power.
That very peaceful transfer of power. Sorry to pull you away from the game, Don. What's the score? You're on mute, Don.
My high-tech abilities wasn't able to find what channel it's on, so I can
Fox
tell you.
Sports 1.
I
I
can tell you
have, hey, Don, it's Paul. I have a 5-year-old's ability to turn the TV on. It's 9-3 still after 5 complete innings. So we're about to start the top of the 6th, 9-3.
Thank you. I did find the Buffalo Bills Tennessee game, and the Bills are ahead 23-17. Oh, wait, they just scored. It's tied 23-23. I'm going to shut the TV off now. I'm really not going to, but I shut it off.
I release the chair back to you, Don.
Peaceful transfer. Thank you, Andrew. Okay, next item on the agenda is review of outdoor illumination rules and regulations. Are we going to skip? Go ahead, Marnie.
Very brief update. So I had attended the Board of Selectmen meeting back on September 21st and received requests for updates. I made those updates and sent them over to Karina. Karina wanted to discuss those updates with me, and I just didn't have a chance balancing work and planning board time. So I wasn't unable to do that. So she proceeded to send those to Lori, our building commissioner, and Lori has provided some comments back, requesting some definitions and some clarity around how things can be enforced. So she really spent a little bit of time looking at that, knowing that she will be the person enforcing. So I think her comments are completely within reason and addressable, and I will work with Karina to do that and ensure that that can be put forward back to the Board of Selectmen. So Lori is understanding how she may be able to enforce that. So I think for the next update, it is really, I have not heard from our town clerk whether or not any of our bylaws, maybe town moderator does, if any of the town bylaws that were approved at the first town meeting this year have been accepted by the Attorney General. So I think we're still in a wait and see mode anyway. So we still have time. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments?
Great job.
Yeah, really awesome job.
A long haul for you.
Very comprehensive document. That's great. Thank you.
Other business properly before the board. Planners report. Do we want to go into that or skip it?
Skip it.
Next item would be the approval of the minutes. Do we want to do that?
So moved.
Which minutes, Mr. Mills?
September 27th.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing it all in favor, Morris, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes. Another
Houlihan,
work
yes.
of art.
So this would be the point in the meeting where we would have a motion to adjourn. If that motion carries, we will be adjourned, but then we will have a very brief administrative huddle right after that. And as soon as either Sarah or Marnie reduce the Zoom to just the 7 of us.
I can lock it once we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.